Good morning and welcome to Senate Finance. And would the committee secretary please call the roll?
Senator Canizaro, Senator Gokachia, Senator Harris, Senator Neal, Senator Wynn, Senator Severs-Gansert, Senator Titus, Chair Dondero Loop.
Thank you very much, and please mark Senator Canizaro present when she arrives. And we are going to start out this morning. We are going to pull the first bill on the agenda, Senate Bill 58. We need to move that to another day, so stay tuned. We're not sure where it'll pop in, but it will at some point. And we are also going to take things out of order. We're going to do Senate Bill 195, and then we will go to Senate Bill 305. So we'll do things in that order, because the very last thing we would ever do is disappoint kindergarten children. And as a former kindergarten teacher for 10 years, you'll know why I fit right into this group. So with that, we will start with Senate Bill 195. And I believe we have Senator Wynn and Ms. Martin joining us. And please go ahead when you're ready.
Good morning, Rochelle Wynn from Senate District 3 for the record, and I'm excited here to present to this Finance Committee Senate Bill 195. I apologize, there is an amendment that I believe was filed last minute, and by last minute, like 2 minutes ago, and it may or may not be up on Nellis right now, and I'm looking at Mr. Thorley, and he's wiping his brow. It's on its way, but
like
I will
kindergarten classroom, you punt.
I will begin to present. SB 195 makes reforms to the Cannabis Compliance Board's regulation of the cannabis industry. It would require the board to consider self-reporting as a mitigating factor, end the CCB's practice of stacking multiple charges, and reduce excessive fines and fees. This includes eliminating the practice of time and effort billing, where the CCB bills licensees hourly for CCB staff time. The CCB does not get funding from general fund. Pursuant to NRS 372A.290, the CCB is funded by the wholesale excise tax, which is more than sufficient to cover the CCB's operating budget. For example, the wholesale excise tax revenue was $63 million in 2022, and the CCB's operating budget was $10 million. The potential reduction in fine and fee revenue addressed in the fiscal note does not impact the general fund at all. The fiscal note was based on what fines and fees the CCB estimates it will collect from licensees. However, these numbers are based on projected non-compliance by licensees. Ideally, with a functioning regulatory system, fines would decrease. We don't want to be overzealous regulators going after licensees in order to hit a budget number. And the fiscal note and the fiscal impact that's associated with that does exactly that. The other piece of the fiscal note is based on time and effort billing. Again, the CCB's practice of billing licensees hourly for staff time. Time and effort billing is not authorized anywhere in statute. Also, it essentially is double billing because the CCB's overhead is entirely covered by the wholesale excise tax. So in presenting Senate Bill 195 to the Policy Committee, this was the intent, is to move away from a system where we are proactively and like trying to hit budget numbers, and so you are overly regulating and penalizing people to hit those like numbers, and this moves us away from that. There is an amendment, so I'm going to kind of go over that amendment because I don't think anyone's had an opportunity.
I believe it's now online, Senator.
Perfect. I see a big thumbs up. I love it. And I will go over that because it does potentially reduce that number as well. The first part of the amendment aligns with what the CCB may do if it finds a licensee has violated the statute or regulations within 233B, which is the Administrative Procedure Act. There is a separate bill that I've co-sponsored with Senator Titus to remove the CCB exemption from the APA and put them back into that. By removing that exemption, the CCB will have oversight of the Legislative Commission, and licensees will have clear and consistent process for adjudicating contested cases. This amendment refers to the section of the APA which sets forth a process for suspending a license and states that the CCB's process for suspending a license must be consistent with the APA. The second part of the amendment we worked on with the CCB, and I want to thank them for that as well. I know that Ms. Martin spent a lot of time with the CCB trying to come up with some things that would be consistent with the policy goals that we are trying to accomplish in Senate Bill 195 as well as Senate Bill 328. And so this is reflective of that work. The bill eliminated all time and effort billing, and this amendment would narrow and carve out for some background investigations. Specifically, if there is a new licensee application, a transfer of interest, a request for approval of management services, or a request for waiver, the CCB's Investigations Division will be permitted to bill the applicant for reasonable costs. The CCB must also provide an estimate in advance of what they believe those costs would be, which typically range, those investigatory costs range from $3,000 to $12,000. And the applicant can request documentation and appeal the final bill if it ends up exceeding that estimate by more than 25%. Outside of the appeal, failure to pay the cost could result in further disciplinary action. We are carving out this narrow exception, which is similar to how gaming bills applicants for background investigations. If an applicant is coming to Nevada with complex financials or multi-state or Canadian company, we want to allow the CCB to bill those applicants for the costs associated with investigating them. And this amendment will reduce the amount of the fiscal note. We don't know exactly. I apologize again that we did this today. I believe the CCB is available and can speak if there are any questions for them specifically. Let's see here. And that is all.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Martin, did you have anything you wanted to add? Okay, thank you. All right, with that being said, are there any questions? Senator Ganser.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm looking at the last part of your amendment where it states failure of a licensure or an applicant for a license to pay costs of the board shall not be a basis for non-issuance, non-renewal, and so forth. And then if they fail to pay costs, it could result in disciplinary action. So kind of what's your hammer if they don't pay? Because you can find them, but they aren't necessarily going to pay then either. So how do you make sure that they cover the costs, especially if you have provided them an estimate and you have to be within 25% of that?
Absolutely, thank you, Lake Martin, for the record. This is the licensing body, and so they have an interest in paying because they will be licensed by this body and coming before this body, and they will be obligated to pay disciplinary. Some of the disciplinary actions that the board can take also include suspension or revocation or money damages or money fines, monetary fines. So they would be interested in paying if they're not appealing the process. We did want to create some sort of appeal process that doesn't currently exist, and that's where the opportunity to question those fines will be available.
Thank you. So you're going to create a process through regulations for appeals then, and then, but you can use the authority that you have to for disciplinary action, which could be a variety of different things. But I mean, to keep their license or to get a license is an incentive, but I'm not sure if it gets to the point where they just decide they're not going to go forward with the license. Do you ever find that folks just don't go forward with the license after they start in the process, or maybe they're going to be declined? So what if you have someone who's not going to be able to get a license and you spent quite a bit of state time and money to do the investigation? What would happen in that case?
So the CCB, thank you, Lake Martin, for the record. The CCB, when we were working on negotiating these, this amendment, they did contemplate that, and so one of the items that they can bill for is for a withdrawal. So they will complete the investigation and can bill for the withdrawal. And so, yes, they would have jurisdiction over the party, even if the party withdraws, as soon as they've applied for a license. So they still have the ability to bring them before the board and require them to either pay the fine or to pay the fine and pay the costs.
Thank you. Just one last question. So is in this process, and I'm not that familiar with it, as you can tell, do they have a minimum amount that they put forward for the application that can be used against any funds or any expenditures that have been made if they decide to withdraw? Because again, you're asking for money for someone who may ultimately not get a license.
Lake Martin, for the record, they do have to put a license, there is an application fee for the license they do have to put forward. There's not a revolving fund in the sense like they have to put up these costs in advance. The process has existed now for a couple of years, and I don't know that that's been an issue. I think the CCB would be able to speak to that. But there isn't a revolving fund currently that they would put up in advance and bill against that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Additional questions? I'd like just a little bit of, so when you talk about in your amendment, costs are limited to a reasonable hourly rate for board agents, what's a reasonably hourly rate?
Lake Martin, for the record, currently in regulation, the hourly rate is $111 per hour.
And if I can have Ms. Martin kind of speak to the need for this bill, because you, as a business owner, as one of the licensees, if you have people come in, you don't have a say on how many people are coming in to do the time and effort billing. You don't know what their training is. You don't know if you're going to end up training them in their facility. So if you can talk a little bit about that.
Thank you. Lake Martin, for the record. The current time and effort practice that we are seeking to eliminate with this bill is that the CCB bills hourly for its staff time for all inspections, audits. They previously used to bill for compliance questions from licensees. And if you had a meeting with 3 CCB agents, you'd be billed for 3 agents' time at $111 per hour. It doesn't matter how experienced the agent is, or if it's their first day, or if they've been there for years. But so you're paying that hourly time. And the reason we sought to prohibit that practice is first because it's not authorized by statute, and second because the CCB's overhead is entirely covered by the wholesale excise tax. And so all of this overhead is already being paid for through the wholesale excise tax, and then they're billing licensees on top of that for their time. And there's no budget for this, there's no appeal process. The licensee currently either pays the bill that they receive or won't get their license renewed. And that can amount to, we have licensees who've billed $47,000 coming out of one inspection and, subsequent back and forth, tens of thousands of dollars that they're sending to the CCB instead of investing those funds in their business. And because this is already covered by the wholesale excise tax, we, again, sought to prohibit that practice.
And this, Rochelle Wynn, for the record, this also goes to Senator Sievers-Gansert, kind of earlier question on what the hammer was, and also kind of in combination with a bill that Senator Titus is bringing around, like some of the oversight and due process, like limitations that we have under our current system. If you receive a bill for $47,000 that includes violations for not having paper towels in your bathroom, that could amount to tens of thousands of dollars, surprisingly, when stacked on other violations. You have no choice in this system because there is really no appellate process. There is no choice. You have to pay that, otherwise you are risking your entire business license. And for most of these businesses, they've literally invested millions and millions of dollars, and they are going to pay like a fine or their time and effort billing, no matter what it is, and find a way to do it, because if they don't, they're going to risk their entire business. And so this bill, in combination with 328, kind of seek to add more due process, more fairness to this industry.
Okay, thank you. Additional questions or concerns from anyone? All right, thank you very much. We will go to those in support here in Carson City. Go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Alex Tanchek with Sierra Cannabis Coalition, here in full support of the bill and the amendment. Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Scott Rutledge with Argentum Partners on behalf of Green Life Productions, Deep Roots Harvest, here in support of the bill. And just as a note, one of my clients, Green Life Productions, has spent over $60,000 in time and effort billing without a violation, and this was to research their growing methodology. So we would really appreciate your support on this bill.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Brett Scalari, Strategies 360 on behalf of CPCM Holdings, Cura Cannabis Solutions, Clark Natural Medicinal Solutions, and Green Mart of Nevada, in full support of the bill and the amendment. Appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, Dondera Loop, and members of the committee. My name is Esther Badiata with Sala Consulting, representing Planet 13 Holdings, R&BW, and Hardin Premium Cannabis Dispensary, and we are in support for SB 195. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any additional support here in Carson City? We'll go to Las Vegas. Las Vegas, anyone in support of Senate Bill 195? Seeing none, we'll go to BPS when you're ready for support for SB 195.
If you would like to testify in support of SB 195, please press star 9 now. Take your place in the queue. The public line is open and working. There are no callers at this time.
Thank you very much. We'll go to opposition here in Carson City. Opposition in Las Vegas. Opposition on the phone line. BPS when you're ready.
If you would like to testify in opposition to SB 195, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. There are no callers choosing to testify at this time.
Thank you very much, and we'll go to neutral in Carson City, in Las Vegas. On the lines, BPS when you're ready.
If you would like to testify in neutral for SB 195, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue.
Thank you
There
very
are
much.
no callers choosing to testify at this time.
Thank you very much. All right, with that, closing comment, Senator Wynn. All righty, then thank you very much, and we'll close the hearing on Senate Bill 195, and we will open up the hearing on Senate Bill 305, and we will ask the treasurer to come forward. Somehow I want to make a joke about kindergarten cop, but I can't come up with it this morning. So
It's not a tumor, Chair.
yeah, go ahead. It's just too early. I'm sure you'll find one in there. All right, go ahead, please, when you are ready. Senator Harris and the Senate and Treasurer Conine, welcome to Senate Finance. Please go ahead.
Good morning, Chair Dondera Loop and members of the Senate Finance Committee. My name is Dallas Harris. I represent Senate District 11. Thank you all so much for taking the time to hear Senate Bill 305 this morning. I'm going to, in tradition of this committee, skip the policy discussion and get right down to the dollars. Hopefully the committee has the fiscal note in front of them. I just want to point out a couple of things, and the treasurer will be here also to be able to answer any questions that the committee has. In the fiscal note as drafted, it assumes that the state of Nevada will be running this program on its own, because that is a possibility. If we cannot team up with another state, we will likely need to have our own investment advisor to help direct what the investments might be. We'll have the additional expenses for the information services, the in-state travel, the operating expenses. However, The most likely outcome is that Nevada will team up with another state that already has a program, and that's for a couple of reasons. One, this program is entirely funded on participant fees. If we join up with another state, that will significantly lower the fees for the participants in our state just by virtue of the number of people in the pool. We would not then need the investment consultant in fiscal years 2023-24 and fiscal year 2024-25, or in the future biennia, which I believe is the largest price tag, except for the additional personnel. And I'll allow the treasurer to talk a little bit about how many people he would need if we teamed up with another state versus if we didn't. But the point is, what you see before you is the most robust version of this program if we were to go at it alone, but it's likely that we're going to team up, and so the cost to the state would be significantly less. Another thing that I want to point out that is very important about this fiscal note: this program is designed to run on the fees of the participants. And so every dime that you see on this fiscal note would be a loan to the program. And then once the program is self-sufficient, it would pay the state back and run on those fees in perpetuity. And so we are not seeking a permanent amount of funding from the general fund, just a loan. Although if the Finance Committee wants to give us a one shot to set it up, we'll take that too. With that, Madam Chair, I will stand for questions.
Thank you, Senator Harris. And I just want to confirm that we do not have an amendment or anything. We're just looking at the first reprint.
That is correct.
All right. And the fiscal notes online are accurate.
That is correct, yes.
Okay. Just confirming, because we've had some of that happen. So thank you very much. Treasurer, it wouldn't be a day in finance without you, so please go ahead if you'd like to make some comments.
Treasurer Conine, for the record, thank you, Chair and Committee, for the discretion and the flexibility so that we can hand out some diplomas to 5-year-olds later today, including our 5-year-olds. But I think the Senator hit the nail on the head. We're looking at a loan. And then one of the two things that can happen here is either we'll run the program internally in the state, which would then cost all of those dollars, or more preferably, we'll join in one of two state compacts that are already in existence. So Colorado and New Mexico are already pooling assets. Of course, as you pool assets, you get to a larger asset base. With a larger asset base, bless you, Senator, you're able to decrease the fees to participants and pay for the underlying part of the program. Oregon also has a relatively robust program, and they started their program in the same way that we're hoping to start this program with a loan from their general fund, which has since been paid back by participant fees. So if that happens, then of course we'll be able to decrease the costs pretty tremendously. One thing we did learn from the other programs is the importance of educating businesses, small businesses, and the individuals in those businesses, giving them the resources they need so that this auto IRA program is not a surprise and they understand how it works, how to get into it, how to get out of it, and that's why you see the marketing numbers that are out there. We want to make sure that they know what's happening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A question, Senator Titus, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And again, Senator Dallas, you and I have, Senator Harris, sorry, you and I have had conversations over this bill, and my concern was, and you mentioned this, that the fees are really participant fees. And are any of these, and not, as you explained, that these are not fees to the state of Nevada, these are participant fees. What about the employer fees? Is the employer as a whole considered the participant, or is the individual that then signs up the participant?
Thank you for the question, Senator Titus. Dallas Harris for the record. It's the employee who is considered the participant. There is no cost to the employer.
But it is, a follow-up if I might, Madam Chair. So it is based that the employer has to have the appropriate pay, the ability in accounting and computerized systems to be able to allow this process to happen.
Thank you for that question, Senator Titus. Dallas Harris for the record. It will be our esteemed treasurer's job to work with employers with their existing payroll systems. We are not going to necessarily require that every employer in the state upgrade their payroll systems, but we're going to, in a phased way, take on employers, and we'll probably start with the bigger employers first because that's the easiest way, and then over time get to those smaller employers. They do not have to have some automated payroll system in order to participate, but that is an issue that other states have worked on and have ironed out, and we'll go ahead and just do something similar to what they've been doing. But no, we will not require employers to upgrade to any particular payroll system or put any mandate on them with respect to that.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And Treasurer Conan, for the record, if I could add to that just a little bit, during the legislative policy process, we've created a minimum number of employees of 5, right? So very, very small companies wouldn't be part of this. And as the program starts going into place, starting in 2025, we'll start, just like other states have, with sort of the largest group of employers and then move to the second largest. Most employers are on one of about 8 different payroll systems. And so those payroll systems are the ones that we would be integrating with to make sure that contributions are able to be made to this program. I expect the ones that aren't on those payroll systems are going to be the ones we get to last once the program is paying enough, creating enough in fees that we can then, pay for an automated system for them.
And I'm sorry, Madam Chair, one little more question. So so when we have a savings account in a bank, we're insured to protect our savings. Is this kind of program have any insurance that you don't lose your savings if these companies that we're investing in or saving with can't survive?
Thank you for the question, Senator Titus. Dallas Harris for the record. I'll start and I'll let the treasurer jump in if he has some additional comments. So there's always a risk in investing, right? And this will be an IRA. And so there's no guarantee that you will maintain your principal based upon whatever investments that you select, right? That's simply not something that the state can guarantee, or Vanguard or Fidelity, right? And this will likely be ran through a third party. And so when it comes to, it's a little bit different than a savings account where you put in your money and it's insured by the FDIC. We're talking more about being able to take your IRA and invest it in bonds or a 2030 retirement mix or any other number of investment vehicles where there is in fact always a risk that the principal may be eroded. Yeah.
Treasurer Conan, for the record, the only thing I'd add to that is that generally these auto IRA programs, which are not meant to compete with the private retirement business, are offering a relatively small subset of risk-adverse asset classes, right? So, a long-term bond fund, a very conservative equity fund, mostly focused on indices and mutuals. So we're not, this isn't like a hedge fund type of play. So while, of course, as the senator said, there is always some sort of risk, it's relatively mitigated in this context.
Okay, I have a couple questions. How long for the loan, like 2 to 4 years, and when will this be able to be paid back if that's the piece?
Treasurer Conan, for the record, there's a few moving parts there, right? One is how large is the loan? Do we need to take out the full amount because we're setting up a program internally in the state versus partnering with another program? If we partner with another program, the asset base comes up quicker and the expense side is less, and so that loan could be paid off within a couple of years. If we have to start a program on our own, build an asset base completely by ourselves, spend the money on investment managers, it would obviously extend a little bit farther. Best example I can make is Oregon, who started spending money in 17 and 18 and paid off their loan in the last 12 or so months. So that's, 5 years?
And with that being said, then, will there need to be, I sort of feel like there'll need to be an amendment for that part at some point. Is that true? I don't see in the actual bill, I don't see that mechanism. So and maybe I'm not reading it properly. If you could give me some information on that.
Treasurer Conan, for the record, so the opportunity, the flexibility to enter into a multi-state compact is within the legislation. I assume functionally, if we did that work and were able to enter into a compact, we would just go back to, well, we wouldn't spend the money, so I wouldn't think we need to do anything. It would revert sort of naturally. But we could also go back to IFC and provide an update, say, hey, we didn't need to spend the money. Feel free to move it to something else that you all wanted to move it to.
Okay, Senator Severs-Gansert.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, in looking at this, you have the definition of a variety of retirement plans, but specifically you're choosing to use an IRA. And, when you look at 401ks and those types of vehicles, you can actually borrow money, and there's certain rules around those versus like an IRA. And so I guess my concern is about individuals who participate in these plans and don't understand that you have to leave the money in there, because if they pull it out, they're going to pay taxes plus a 10% penalty. And you can replace that money within 60 days, but the timeline I think you have in this bill is 120 days if you want to put money back into an account. So retirement plans are pretty complex. And I don't, I've spoke to some folks who've started these plans in other states, and they've had some real issues with people not understanding that there's no take-backs. You can't put the money in and then take it out like it's a savings account. So can you speak to that a little bit?
Treasurer Conan, for the record, we completely agree. Retirement plans, by their very nature, are complicated, and that's why, after talking to those other states who have run into those issues, we've had that, I think, that exact same conversation, and we wanted to make sure that there was enough education up front so that individuals, as they get rolled onto these plans, know exactly what the rules and restrictions are. As far as the selection of IRAs versus other programs, our big focus was on looking at ways that we could join other state compacts, and kind of by definition, our program would need to be able to mirror their program in order to share assets and then decrease costs. That was the driver there.
And Madam Chair, Dallas Harris, for the record, I agree that retirement plans are at times complex. But it has been my experience that the current reality is that those folks who would go and take the money from their IRA, if they did not have that, would instead be going and getting a payday loan or some much more riskier savings mechanism that they don't have, right? And so worst case scenario is now people have some money to tap into that they probably shouldn't be tapping into, but absent this program, they don't even have that option. And I know that the treasurer is going to do his normal bang-up job in educating folks, which is why we've got that advertising money in there. And then ideally, I'm hoping that at some point we'll be able to expand the program so that it has a mechanism where there's a small amount that's in a savings account before you go ahead and invest the funds into the IRA. That would be easier to tap into when you need some assistance. And so there is the ability throughout this program to allow for a kind of savings pool and your investment pool.
Treasurer Conan, for the record, and I think something else that we haven't mentioned that we should mention is that in designing this program and working with chambers of commerce, we also wanted to make sure that it was a perfectly acceptable alternative for businesses who are currently participating in a retirement program through some other method, right? They offer a 401k or they're participating in chamber sponsored retirement plan to be able to use those, right? And so we know that there are other people in the space who will be educating as well.
Okay, and then, so I guess the concern is that it's complex for people to do it, and then that it's an opt-out versus an opt-in, because we have a very successful 529 plan, right, for savings for students in our state, for families in our state, that's gone very well, but there's the risks with that as far as, getting people invested in it. They understand what they're getting into. That money is after-tax dollars. There aren't sort of the consequences. But again, it's an opt-in versus requiring. And I'm just concerned about requiring companies to participate because these expenses that they potentially incur, but also that individuals, and I know you're going to educate folks, but what I don't want to see are a couple of things, right? I don't want someone to have a big tax bill that they can't pay because we don't want them not to be paying their federal income tax because they took it out, they pay current taxes plus another 10% penalty. So that is, one of the major concerns. I guess I'll just leave it at that. I just don't want people to be penalized because they're trying to save. But the restrictions around these types of vehicles are such that I don't want people to take payday loans either, and that's why we have the earned wage bill, right? So that might help people there. But owing money to the IRS is significant, and you get in a lot more trouble if you aren't able to pay your taxes and that penalty.
Thank you for that, Senator Severs-Gansert. Dallas Harris, for the record, to you through Chair Dondera Loop. I think that is not a great scenario, right, to be owing the federal government some money at the end of the day, which is why the mechanism is set up in such a way that you have, I believe the last number we landed on was at least 90 days to see, for most folks, that's going to be at least 6 paychecks, right, to see how this is affecting your income and to be able to withdraw that and opt out at any time. In addition, you'll get that money back penalty free within 90 days. In addition, the way that this program will work is that you will be able to go and elect a 0 contribution at any time moving forward. If you find that it's something that you can't afford or that you need additional money in your pocket, you will be able to do that at any time while you are enrolled in this program, and it will be a simple go online, choose 0, and your very next paycheck, or depending on how close that change in election is, the paycheck after that will then reflect that new election, and the money will then just sit for you in perpetuity and continue to make money. And so we're trying to make sure that there are lots of options for folks to jump off if they feel that they need to or simply can't afford it. And we will do our level best to make sure people understand that this is not a savings account. But I am firm in my belief that something is better than nothing.
Thank you. Just one other comment. So that the penalties accrue if you say you take money out, you have to put it back in within 60 days, or you get penalized. So I think that's something, if you're building timeframes into this, if someone's going to be taking money out, they need to have that understanding that they've got 60 days to put it back in, or they do get taxed and penalized. Thank you.
All right, any additional questions or comments? All right, seeing none, thank you very much. Unless you have more comments to make, we will go to those in support here in Carson City. Please go ahead when you're ready.
Kent Irvin, speaking for myself today. Based on my experience being on the NSHE Retirement Plan Advisory Committee since 2006, and in my second term on the Nevada Deferred Compensation Program, appointed by Governor Sandoval and reappointed by Governor Sisolak. I testified in the Policy Committee in full support. I'm a big fan of retirement security. Social Security is not enough. But on the fiscal issues, so on those committees, and I'm not speaking for them, on those committees, I've been in a position of reviewing budgets for many years. Really proud at NSHE that we brought down absolute cost, as well as by a factor of 3, the percentage cost to participants based on rise of assets. But each of those programs have an administrative budget right around $400,000 a year. It's a fixed kind of cost for investment consultant, auditors, and personnel. Doesn't really matter how many assets you have. It does matter somewhat how many payrolls you're working with. NSHE, there's 1. NDC, there's state, NSHE, and I think around 100 local government entities. This, of course, this program could potentially have hundreds or thousands of payrolls to deal with, but a lot of that apparently is going to be automated. So just to say, the fiscal note seems very reasonable before you get to the extra marketing that they certainly will need right away. Thank you.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
Good morning, Chair Dondero Loop and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Maria Moore, and I'm the State Director for AARP Nevada, and we're in strong support of SB 305. AARP is a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization and is dedicated to helping people ages 50 and older improve their quality of life as they age. But in doing so, we also focus on those nearing or currently working towards retirement. We work at all stages of their careers because we know that someday they will retire in the future. This state, like many other states, are facing a retirement crisis. And in Nevada, there's 566,000 Social Security beneficiaries, of which close to 30% rely on Social Security as their only source of retirement and family income. Social Security, we know, was never intended to be the sole source of retirement. And we know that in this crisis, many will not be able to afford simple things like, or important things like medicine, rent, utilities. With fewer employers unable or willing to offer traditional pension plans, we know that there's 15 times, workers are 15 times less likely to save for retirement if they do not have access to a payroll deduction. And in certain groups, people are disproportionately impacted by the lack of access to retirement savings plans. Employees of color are significantly less likely to have access in the workplace retirement plan, and households of color have disproportionately lower retirement savings than white households. Programs such as these laid out in SB 305 are necessary to reach a huge and underserved population. For those reasons, we applaud and urge Senate Bill 305 in its passing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please go ahead.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Chelsea Capurro here on behalf of the Urban Chamber. We are in support of SB 305 and thank the sponsor for bringing this.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Vice Chair Canizaro, and members of the committee for the opportunity to testify on behalf of SB 305. My name is Susan Fisher with McDonald Carano, and speaking today on behalf of the Pew Charitable Trusts. Pew is a nonpartisan, nonprofit public policy organization. Pew supports Senate Bill 305 for the nearly 600,000 private sector Nevada workers who lack access to a workplace retirement plan. Nevada faces a crisis because workers are not saving enough. Insufficient retirement savings will increase pressure on public assistance programs serving older adults. New Pew Commission research has three major findings. One, the number of Nevada residents aged 65 and older is expected to double to just over 1 million by 2040. Two, a shrinking population of working-age taxpayers will need to cover the costs for the financially vulnerable. Three, over the 20-year period ending in 2040, insufficient retirement savings will result in additional state social assistance spending of $1.8 billion, or about $90 million per year. But if Nevada households saved an additional $110 per month, they could erase this taxpayer burden and maintain their standard of living in retirement. How can households reach these goals? The answer is creating an automated savings program such as proposed in SB 305. These programs are effective. 14 states have passed legislation creating similar savings programs. In states where these programs are operating, roughly 650,000 savers have accumulated over $800 million in assets. These programs help workers feel more financially secure, and they enable small businesses to provide retirement benefits and compete with larger businesses to recruit and retain workers. While a new savings program will need funding to get started, Pew's analysis finds that these programs can be self-financing over time. A modest investment for program startup is very small compared to the $1.8 billion fiscal impact of inadequate savings. SB 305 will benefit employers, workers, and taxpayers. Please support this legislation, and thank you again for the opportunity today.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Chris Ferrari on behalf of the American Retirement Association. We have Andrew Remo calling in remotely, Madam Chair, by phone, so he'll be supporting as well. As a small employer here in support of SB 305, just wanted to note for the committee's benefit, I don't believe it's been brought up, one of the themes of the session is to ensure that we're not leaving federal dollars on the table. Through the Secure 2.0 Act, there is a tax credit covering administrative expenses up to $5,000 for the first 3 years of program implementation. As a small employer who does offer employees a 401k program, that would fully offset the cost of that administration. I think that's important to note for the record. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any additional support here in Carson City? Las Vegas, any support? We'll go to the phone lines. BPS, when you're ready.
If you would like to testify in support of SB 305, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue.
Good morning, Chair Dundera-Loop and members of the committee. My name is Brian Harris, BrianHarris, and I'm an organizer with Battle Born Progress, and we are here to testify in support of SB 305 to create the Nevada Employee Savings Trust. Retirement savings are becoming more and more scarce. As a result, those of retirement age may have insufficient resources to sustain their retirement. That means more reliance on social services, meaning the taxpayer effectively subsides the lack of employer-sponsored retirement benefits. We think that a poor use of taxpayer dollars, which could otherwise be spent supporting working families, improving our public education system, and creating jobs fixing our state infrastructure, among other things. This is a good bill and a good investment, and we urge you to pass it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next caller, please.
Caller, press *6 to unmute.
Hi, this is John Scott from the Pew Charitable Trust. I'm calling today in support of SB 305 to create the Nevada Employee Savings Trust. And I'm just calling in to make one specific point that was discussed during the prior debate, and namely that there's some question about whether there are penalties about taking money out of the IRAs that would be used in the proposed program. These IRAs are Roth IRAs, and contributions that are made to these Roth IRAs will be after tax only. And under federal law, contributions can be taken out without penalty or taxes. Only withdrawals that are of the investment returns would be subject to any taxes. And even that, if the funds are held for a period of years, they could then be withdrawn penalty-free. So any contributions that are made to these Roth IRAs can be taken out penalty and tax-free. I just wanted to clarify that one point. Again, the Pew Charitable Trust supports this legislation, and we urge your support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next caller, please.
Hello, everybody. My name is Andy Remo. I'm with the American Retirement Association. We're a nonprofit education and advocacy organization for retirement plan and benefits professionals. Our members and their affiliated organizations support 95% of all the defined contribution plans, such as 401k plans in the United States. And we have over 35,000 retirement plan professionals nationwide, including 184 members in the state of Nevada. So our mission is to advocate for policies that give every working American the ability to have a comfortable retirement. So we strongly support SB 305, the NEST Act, and I'd like to make three basic points. The first is small businesses support payroll deduction savings programs. Pew's done some great surveys here that found that 86% of small and mid-sized employers without plans support the concept of a payroll deduction retirement plan with automatic enrollment. And even amongst the smaller employers, 51% said they would start their own plan, like a 401k plan, rather than enroll workers in the state-facilitated program. The second point is that auto IRA programs complement the private sector retirement plan market. They don't compete with it. Recent released data shows that private sector retirement plan adoption rates rose in 3 states as a direct result of those states implementing an auto IRA program with a retirement plan coverage requirement. And then third, as Chris mentioned, there are brand new federal small employer plan designs and startup incentives that the federal government enacted last year that really would make it easy for small businesses to have a wide variety of plans that they can choose to meet this requirement. So the bottom line is this is a great time to do this bill, and we strongly support it and hope it gets done. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next caller, please.
There are no callers choosing to testify at this time.
Thank you very much. We'll go to opposition here in Carson City, Las Vegas. On the phone lines, BPS when you're ready.
The public line is open and working. There are no callers at this time.
Thank you very much. And we'll go to neutral here in Carson City, Las Vegas, and on the phone lines, please.
There are no callers choosing to testify at this time.
Thank you very much. Closing comments, Senator Harris.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll keep it brief. Dallas Harris for the record. We absolutely have to do something. If we don't get people saving, and I mean soon, our social programs are going to be crushed. The cost of medical care is on the rise. The cost of housing is on the rise. And unfortunately, it is, it's really difficult for folks to set up these programs if they can't do it through their employer. I mean, you gotta go down, take your paycheck, go to Wells Fargo, go to Vanguard, go to Fidelity, open up the IRA, contribute your post-tax dollars, but if you want to do a traditional, then you got to get a form from whoever you're participating with at the end of the year, file that with your taxes so it comes off your taxable income, and we know most folks simply aren't going to do that. So this is a way to ensure that people get saving because the government is not going to be able to sustain those social services if we don't. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And with that, I will close the hearing and excuse the kindergarten parents. Remember to be silly, be honest, and be kind when you're a kindergartner. So congratulations and enjoy. All right, we will close that hearing and we will go on to Senate Bill 231. And we'll ask Senator Cannizzaro to join us. And Speaker Yeager is on his way, so everybody may just need to take a little bit of a breath. Thank you. Well, good morning, Speaker. So good to see you on this side of the fence. All right, please go ahead when you're ready with Senate Bill 231.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Nicole Cannizzaro. I represent Senate District 6 in the northwest portion of the Las Vegas Valley and serve as your Senate Majority Leader. I am honored to be here this morning alongside my friend and colleague, Steve Yeager, who serves as the Speaker of your Nevada Assembly, and we are here to present to you Senate Bill 231. Madam Chair, with your permission and leeway, I know we are a finance committee. This bill does have to do with money, that's why it is in finance, but I
would just note that this particular bill was not heard by a policy committee because it does really just impact our budget decisions, despite the fact that that there are pieces of the bill. So with your permission, I would like the indulgence to be able to walk through the bill a little bit and provide some commentary on the necessity and the reasoning for bringing this bill, even though I know we are trying to keep our presentation short because this one did not have another hearing. We would just like the leeway to be able to discuss a little bit more.
Thank you very much, and please go ahead. This is a very important subject. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Again, members of the committee, thank you for hearing Senate Bill 231 this morning. This bill provides for the appropriation of money to school districts for the support of public schools. By way of background information, I think we are all aware that teacher pay is often viewed as a major factor in attracting qualified people into the profession. With severe shortages in educational personnel, states across the nation are using financial and other incentives to continue improving recruitment and retention rates of school staff. According to the National Center for Education Statistics, teachers in the United States earned an average of $66,397 compared to $57,804 in Nevada in 2021 to 2022, which is a difference of over $8,500. Recruiting and retaining Nevada's school personnel is critical to the educational performance of Nevada's students. Higher quality and more robust education gives our students a solid foundation upon which they can build towards a successful future. But first, we must start by recruiting and retaining more educational personnel across the board. Madam Chair and members of the committee, I am a product of the Nevada public school system. My parents did not have a high school education, but I had the opportunity to attend some wonderful schools in Nevada. I went to Vegas Verdes Elementary School and J.M. Ullum Elementary School, Woodbury Middle School, and graduated from Chaparral High School. I am the type of kid that, for me, public school and the teachers and the personnel who served in those schools absolutely gave me the opportunity and the pathway to be sitting before you all today. Without that, I don't know how a kid with parents who are uneducated and who are just working every day and did a fantastic job as parents. I have to give them a lot of kudos. They're wonderful people. But there's no pathway for a kid like me to find themselves in the Nevada Legislature or in a courtroom without a good education. And that starts first and foremost with the teachers who were in each of my classrooms, whose names I think are burnt into my memory, and those memories with them where they said to me, you can do this, or you are capable, or we know that this is not your best work, so why don't you go try again because you're smarter than this. Those types of encouragement is exactly what our kids need and what our kids actually really do need at this point in time. Those Nevada students sitting in those classrooms is a qualified teacher in every classroom. They deserve that. We as a legislature owe that to them. And that's something that I know, Madam Chair, you are very passionate about, and something that I am definitely, both personally and professionally in this building, very passionate about as well. And so what Senate Bill 231 seeks to do is to provide incentives to ensure that we are investing in those teachers and those support personnel that help run our schools each and every day. By way of a summary, I'll walk you through the bill very briefly. Senate Bill 231 appropriates $250 million from the State General Fund to the Interim Finance Committee for allocation to school districts for the support of public schools. This money may only be allocated to a district if sufficient documentation demonstrates that the district has budgeted for an increase in salaries for teachers and other educational personnel or paraprofessionals from sources other than this money, in addition to any salary increase planned or bargained for prior to the effective date of this bill, and that this budgeted salary increase does not replace or supplant any other form of compensation provided before fiscal year 2023 to 2024, or which was planned or bargained for in FY 2023-24 or after. Additionally, the $250 million may only be allocated if the school district has submitted a statement to the IFC concerning the budgeted salary increase, and the district superintendent has submitted a signed statement to the IFC certifying the information and that the district will provide the salary increases. Subsection 3 provides that the allocation of this money to a district must not exceed a certain amount as outlined, and subsection 4 requires school districts to report personnel numbers to Nevada's Department of Education. The department will then compile and submit this information to IFC by August 15th of this year. And subsection 6 addresses any remaining balance of the appropriation left in 2025. I would note that members of the committee should have on your desks, and it is available on NELIS, proposed amendment number 3686 to Senate Bill 231. When this bill was originally drafted, when we had come up with the concept, the Speaker and I had spoke about what ways we could ensure that we were investing in those very important teachers and personnel that support our schools. We had intended for this bill to encompass opportunities for not just teachers in the classroom, but also for staff. When the bill was originally written, it included language referring to paraprofessionals, which is a very specific subset of that, but we had intended for it to include the opportunity for salary increases for all types of support staff. That was something that was very clear from both Madam Chair, the Chairwoman of Ways and Means, the Speaker, and myself at the inception of this bill. What this particular amendment that was submitted to this bill does is clarifies that. As you'll see, excuse me, in section 1, subsection 7 of the amendment, it talks about the education support professionals and support personnel, and outlines several categories of that. Our intent with this amendment is to capture the ability for support staff to be included in the provisions of Senate Bill 231, so it's not just teachers or a paraprofessional. It would include support staff throughout our school systems, and so that's the purpose of that amendment. With that, Madam Chair, what I would like to do is turn it over to Speaker Yeager for some additional remarks.
Thank you very much. And Speaker Yeager, please go ahead.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. It is a pleasure to be here this morning. My name is Steve Yeager. I represent Assembly District 9 in Southwest Las Vegas, and I'm honored to serve as the Speaker of the Nevada Assembly. It is a pleasure to be here this morning with the Senate Majority Leader Cannizzaro, and I want to thank her for bringing this bill and allowing me to sign on to the bill. I think if we all think back, you probably remember a teacher that made a real difference in your life. And I'm not a product of the Nevada public schools, but I am a product of public schools in Southeast Michigan. And when I think about my time there, I think about a particular teacher that I had around the 10th or 11th grade. Memory fades, I don't know what year it was, but her name was Mrs. Kreft. And to this day, she's probably the most instrumental teacher I've ever had. It wasn't that I wasn't doing well in school, it was that I was just kind of coasting. And she was someone who saw something in me I think I didn't see in myself. And as my colleague said, she said, you need to step it up. You're coasting. You've got potential. And she was an amazing teacher and just came up with assignments that were inspiring. And that takes me to We Didn't Start the Fire by Billy Joel. So if you thought this was going to go in a different direction, I'm sorry, but you probably know the beginning of that song. I'm not going to sing it, but I am going to say a few lines. Harry Truman, Doris Day, Red China, Johnny Ray, South Pacific, Walter Winchell, Joe DiMaggio. So why do I talk about that? One of the really cool assignments that Ms. Kraft had was she took all these different concepts from the song and put them on pieces of paper, and we all had to draw out of a bowl, and that was your homework assignment. You had to do a presentation on what that particular thing was about. And I still remember that to this day, and I cannot hear that song on the radio without thinking back to that experience. Now, I did not get any of those first parts of the lyrics. I was down in the part that was Hemingway, Eichmann, Stranger in the Strange Land, Dylan, Berlin, Bay of Pigs Invasion. Now, I would have liked Dylan, but I got Bay of Pigs Invasion, which was also pretty interesting. And I'll tell you that, that to me, that really ignited a love of history, of international relations, of the Spanish language. I didn't know anything about the Bay of Pigs Invasion. But after that presentation, and we went through weeks and weeks of classmates presenting on these topics, really inspired me ignited in me a curiosity to learn, ignited in me something more than just going through the motions. And that's what we're here to talk about today. We're here to talk about our educators. You know, this is 20 plus years ago, and I still remember that like just vividly. And it's not just Mrs. Kreft, it's other teachers, just the ones who really inspire. And, you know, for Mrs. Kreft, it wasn't just on the academic front. That was at a time in my life where things at my house were in turmoil. And she noticed that, and she would take time to say, how are things going? She would take time to, I think, create after-school assignments for me on her own time to make sure that I had a safe place to learn and to experience. Because for her, you know, teaching wasn't just a job. It wasn't you show up, you get your paycheck, and you go home. It was a passion. It was a way of life. And I can't thank her enough for what she did for me. And I know we have teachers all across the state who are doing the same for the next generation of Nevadans, not just here in our state, but around the country. And that extends well beyond educators in the classroom. It extends to the professionals who are around them, who make our schools operate and lead to learning environments that are productive for our students. So I see this bill as a way of saying loud and clear to our educators and our support professionals who have really had it rough over the last few years, that we see you, we appreciate you, we thank you, and we want to do everything we can in our power to incentivize some of this money to be able to go to where it should go, and that's to compensate you adequately, no, because teachers should probably be making $250,000 a year or more. But to compensate them for what they're doing and to say that there's nothing more important to us than our students and their future. So, Madam Chair, thank you so much for allowing me to share that. I hope I didn't put that song in your head for too long of the day, but just urge your support of this measure, because I think anything we can do to show our teachers and support staff that we appreciate them and we want them to be well compensated is something well worth this body doing.
Thank you very much, Speaker Yeager. Senator Cannizzaro?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nicole Cannizzaro, Senate District 6. I think I probably speak for everyone in this room that now that song is squarely in my head, which it might be a bit of a reprieve from the number of the day on Sesame Street. So I'll take it and thank the Speaker for that. Madam Chair, I do think it is helpful, and certainly the Speaker and I serve in this body. We are not teachers in the classroom. You probably know way more about all of that and all of the pieces that come along with that than the two of us do, but we do, I think you can see, care very much and want to prioritize, because I think that's important when we talk about what happens in this building. Prioritizing things that we believe in and things that we think deserve our attention. And right now our teachers and the support staff that help them and serve our students every single day should be making more money. And so how do we ensure that that happens? How do we ensure that we can continue to recruit and retain them? I think some of the difficulties on the ground that exist within our education space, and particularly with teachers and support staff, is certainly something that we're aware of, that we don't live every day, but that we do want to find a solution to. Madam Chair, with your permission, I do have down at Grant Sawyer Mr. Velardita, who can, I think, maybe give a little bit more context to some of the challenges with respect to vacancies, with respect to in the classroom, and with professional personnel who are serving our students, just to be able to provide a little bit more context to what we know is an issue and what we are trying to address. And so with your permission, I would like to let him just give a couple of remarks so that we all have a good idea of what it is we are dealing with on the ground. And then the Speaker and I would be happy to take any questions that you or the members of the committee may have.
Thank you very much, and welcome, Mr. Velardita. Please go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the Senate Finance Committee. My name is John Velardita. I represent the Clark County Education Association. And I want to first and foremost acknowledge the majority leader and the Speaker for moving this piece of legislation forward. The way I would ask folks to look at this piece of legislation would be in the context of, yes, it says it's for trying to move additional compensation for educators, but when it really gets down to it, it's also about students. And I want to try to make that case for you so that you understand. Obviously, we have a crisis nationwide, statewide, and in particular in Clark County. You often hear of how many vacancies we have. And at some point, you become numb to that figure, that there's 1,400 vacancies, right? Well, over the next 10 years, we're going to need 14,000 educators in Clark County alone through attrition and growth in student population. Statewide, it's 19,000. But we currently have that 1,400 vacancy just down in Clark. I want to highlight a particular thing of importance. 86% of those 1,400 vacancies come from what we call these at-risk buildings, hard-to-fill positions. That's incredible, that kind of number. And I also want to point out the school district at the start of the school year, that's Clark County School District, from there till May 1st had hired 2,161 teachers, but at the same time, as of May 1st of this year, they lost 1,224. That's 53% of what was hired we lost. I have never seen in 12 years this kind of trend that's emerging, nor have I seen 86% of these vacancies and these at-risk buildings. So what does it mean for kids? The majority of these at-risk kids or in these buildings are working class kids of color. We have 500 vacancies in the elementary schools, and these are Title I schools. That's almost 14,000 students. We have 337 vacancies just in English, math, and science courses. That's over 12,500 students that are affected by that. And our special need kids in special education, we have over 330 some odd vacancies. That's another 3,000 students. So what I'm getting at is that we have close to 30,000 students that start the school year and will end the school year in Clark County that do not have a classroom teacher. And at the same time, while we've been hiring, we're losing more than what we're hiring. What this bill attempts to do is address retention, stop the bleed, as well as be able to compete. But if we're not able to do that, here's another set of data that's very compelling. And this is the data of the student proficiency levels in these at-risk buildings as of their last complete year, 21-22. So the math proficiency rate in elementary schools was 23%. For ELA, it was 33%. For math in middle schools, it was 15% proficiency and 33% for English language learners. And in high school, it was almost 12% proficiency in math and 33% in ELA. High school graduates, by the time they graduated, only 19.7% were proficient in math and only 44% were proficient in ELL. These are students that are coming out of these classrooms that does not have a full-time educator as a result of not being able to retain teachers as well as be able to recruit. This bill addresses that. But I want to go further in terms of being competitive in our recruitment. We currently have a shortage of teachers. As I said, nationwide, statewide, we have a pipeline issue, right? I know there's legislation to address that in this session. Hopefully that will be successful. But I can tell you just from Clark County's perspective, out of all the vacancies that we have, only 67% are filled by educators in the state of Nevada. That means 23% are filled outside of the state. And out of that 23%, 8% are out of the country. And then even after that recruitment, we still are left with almost 8 to 9% vacancies. So we're not competitive. We don't have the capacity. That's a different issue, but we're not market competitive. And what do I mean by that? In 2014-2015 school year, and in the 2015 session, Clark County experienced 1,500 vacancies, and we were competing with 10,000 openings in the western United States. That's the same market we compete with right now to try to recruit teachers. We weren't competitive in the starting salary. We were around $37,000. The average salary at that time was a little over $40,000. In the legislative session of 2015, more money was allocated in K through 12, as well as there was $5,000 recruitment bonus. In 1 year's time, from 1,500 vacancies, the following year we had 500 vacancies. Still vacancies, but a reduction of 66%. Why? We were able to boost the starting pay to $42,000, and we were able to use the enticement of a bonus to try to recruit people. But now here we are 8 years later. And it's not deja vu, it is worse. The retention trend is worse. The high vacancies and hard to fill positions is worse. And so what this bill attempts to do is to put and infuse more dollars into addressing this issue. Now, some will say, well, this is intervening with collective bargaining. And I would argue this is addressing at the state level a crisis that we're experiencing. And is being prescriptive and saying to school districts, you have to address this issue of being able to recruit an educator as well as retain an educator. And you need to use this money accordingly. And that's why we think it's high time that this type of bill, this type of legislation is not just proposed, but passed. Is it enough? Obviously, we could always use additional money, but we also know that there's other challenges that are facing the state, and you all have a very difficult job trying to balance where those resources go. But in this particular case, you know, SB 231 is an attempt to essentially tell school districts we need to address this issue among educators as well as other staff to be able to recruit them and to retain them. And then I just want to close with this as to why we need this to be prescriptive. We are already hearing from the school district that they're going to balk at this type of piece of legislation. You had a hearing where they presented and they said, even with SB 231, they're not going to be able to give significant raises. I would beg to differ with that, but at the same time, tonight at a school board meeting, they're going to be presenting to the trustees down here in Clark, and they're going to say, and they're going to highlight, legislation at the state level like this is not going to solve their problem. I think that can't be any further from the truth. This is a step in the right direction. We need strong language in SB 231 that essentially says these kind of dollars have to be spent that way. I think what the majority leader has proposed and with the support of the speaker, I think this is the type of legislation that we need to address what I would call is a statewide problem. It's a crisis, and I think it's very appropriate for the state to propose legislation like this. And finally, I would say this to Governor Lombardo. This is the type of legislation we need to fix the issue of putting a classroom teacher in every classroom. This is not something that we can ignore any further. The governor has done a good job from CCA's point of view, allocating over $2 billion in the budget, but we would also ask for support on a piece of legislation like this. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Villardita. All right, with that, any additional comments?
Nicole Canizaro, Senate District 6. Thank you, Madam Chair. At this point, Speaker Yeager and myself would be happy to answer any questions that you or the committee may have on Senate Bill 231, and thank you for your indulgence and time this morning.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, questions from the committee. Senator Sievers-Ganser.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I just have a few questions. This is one-shot money, but the way this bill is designed, it is for percent increases versus it was just stated by Mr. Villardita, like recruitment bonuses or retention incentives and things like that, which would be uses for one shot. So I guess the question is about making sure that this is sustainable if you're asking for a percentage increase, or is this going to be opened up to allow them to use it in different ways, again, to incentivize current licensed, non-licensed support staff, because this is much broader than just teachers. So is this going to be more flexible, or does it have to be a percent increase?
Thank you for the question, Nicole Canizaro, Senate District 6, through you, Madam Chair, to Senator Sievers-Gansert. So first and foremost, what I would note about Senate Bill 231 is that as we look at, and this committee is obviously acutely familiar with funding for education and how that works under the new pupil-centered funding plan. Under the pupil-centered funding plan, any increases in revenue to the state, either through general fund revenues that are increased over the biennium, or as we see when we talk about whether there will be $2 billion in education additionally. Those are other funds, right? Anything outside of the general fund that is going into education flows into the pupil-centered funding plan. And obviously there are some things that live outside of that, but for the most part, that flows into the plan. The $2 billion that we keep talking about, which is part of the education budget and which we of course have talked about and passed in this legislative session as a legislative body, and that that we're contemplating in terms of funding education comes from those other sources. And that's a product of an anticipated increase in collections for those particular revenue sources. When we talk about the general fund portion, however, and I know that we've discussed this in the education subcommittee, the pieces of the general fund that we would expect to see increased revenue flow into simply are not provided within, and were not provided within, the governor's recommended budget. That is a choice that the governor can certainly make. But that is a choice to not include additional revenues into the pupil-centered funding plan as a result of increased projections from general fund revenues. And so from my perspective, when we look at the idea that there should be additional money flowing into the pupil-centered funding plan, and when we look at the fact that there is a decision made to not put additional general fund revenue that would otherwise, under the pupil-centered funding plan and current law, flow into that, there, I believe, is additional money that we can utilize within the state budget for a variety of reasons, one of which being that in order to incentivize teacher and support staff raises. So as this is written, it is a sort of grant fund that would allow for this particular money to be used for that particular purpose. I do not believe, because of the general fund portion, because of the revenues that we have been looking at and the overall funding that we have put together in this budget, that this is setting us up for a fiscal cliff, fiscal irresponsibility, because we are going to say that we want to find a way to invest in teachers and support staff. As currently written, Senator, you're correct, it's a percentage. We want to make sure that districts are putting together plans to talk about how they are going to pay their folks more, because we know that that is a problem. And certainly different districts are differently situated and have different vacancy rates and may find different ways to incentivize that. Always happy to talk about ways in which this will work. But the reason for Senate Bill 231 is because I believe that there is the funding to do this. The $250 million is an appropriate and responsible amount of money. I think it would be more irresponsible for us not to find a way, or for us to pass a budget that hopefully is going to get signed with this $2 billion influx from the additional revenues, but I think that as of recently, that remains to be seen. We have to do something to incentivize teacher raises. And I think that this amount of money is appropriate given the fact that we didn't see increases in general fund revenue going to the pupil-centered funding plan, given that we have additional revenues, and given that we have a very serious problem with teacher raises. I think it would be smarter for us to include this in terms of match-to-match grant money for percentage raises than retention bonuses. Happy to have conversations about what the mechanics of this entire bill may look like, but the whole purpose of this is to create some sustainable funding, right? Because we're talking about recruitment and retention of teachers. We're talking about teacher salaries and raises. That has to be something that we are invested in, not just today, not just through this biennium, but in the long term. So I would prefer that we do talk about percentage raises, because I think that's what's going to help us keep those teachers. I think that we can do that as a state, and I think that this is a good way to ensure that that actually happens, that that piece of it happens, the teacher raise piece, but certainly happy to have any conversations with you about the mechanics of how the bill may work.
Thank you, Madam Chair, if I can follow up. So originally it was licensed personnel, but you have all sorts of different types of personnel too. And so, but if we put something in statute, it has to be used that specific way. And so I guess whether there's consideration that you have licensed personnel that are percentages and the other ones the school districts can figure out how they want to use the bucket of money. So that's an idea. And then, the other thing is it talks about a head count, but should we be using head count or full-time equivalent? Because we have so many people who are part-time as far as when the school districts come in and they look at the number of personnel, because then the money ends up getting divided up a little bit differently if you're looking at full-time equivalents versus a head count. So that's sort of another logistics question. Oh, and the last thing I had was, how do they count substitutes or long-term subs, or do they count subs or long-term subs? So how do you come up with sort of the number that you're requesting from them to be able to divvy up the pool? Because that will vary school district to school district as well. Thank you.
And thank you, Senator Sievers-Ganser, for the question. Through you, Madam Chair, to Senator Sievers-Ganser, Nicole Cannizzaro, Senate District 6. So part of Senate Bill 231, right, requires, because we know that there may be some differentials in either the amount of subs or the amount of long-term subs or the amount of part-time or what sort of support staff you have. And so part of this is an accountability and a reporting requirement for the districts, right? We want to be able to see you are using or have a plan to use your money for raises for these individuals. We purposefully wanted to include support staff. As originally written, it said paraprofessionals, but we wanted to make sure that it was actually support staff. And the original inception of this particular bill, among the leadership from the speaker and myself and our money chairs, was to include support staff, because I don't think that it is enough for us to say that it's just teachers. And certainly we have heard that this particular crisis doesn't exist with just teachers, right? And teachers work in a classroom, but they have a lot of folks who are helping them to deliver the education to the students. They're just as necessary part of the educational personnel. So we wanted to make sure that they are included. Certainly to the extent that, based on a percentage, that individual would qualify for a raise, and the district is going to give us a plan through IFC, which is part of the mechanics of this particular bill, to show how it is that they are funding those raises. Then there would be match dollars from this particular set of money for this $250 million to be able to provide that to the district. So I do think that there is flexibility in that. As respect to headcount versus full-time, certainly happy to talk about whether it makes more sense to do one or the other, but I think our intent was that there would be accountability and reporting for us to be able to make that decision in allocating the money out of the $250 million that is set aside, and we wanted to make sure that we did include both staff and teachers.
Thank you. I think we just need to make sure that the school districts report consistently, however we're counting, that it's all consistent. And then my last question is, when I think about the public schools, we've got the public charter schools. It's the second largest school district in the state. So it goes Clark County public charter schools, and then again public schools in Washoe County and other counties. So I wanted to make sure that those were included as well.
Thank you for the question, Senator Sievers-Ganser. Through you, Madam Chair, to Senator Sievers-Ganser, Nicole Cannizzaro, Senate District 6. So charter schools are not included in Senate Bill 231. I think we can have a separate conversation about some of the pieces of that. This is really designed for our public schools. That would apply to all the school districts within the state. So to include, I think to your point, Senator, Washoe County Public Schools.
Thank you, and I guess they're public schools too, and so I guess we can talk offline about that. But when you look at the number of, there's over 65,000, I think, students in the public schools that are under the public school district that's within the state of Nevada, and there's other public schools that are sponsored by the school districts, but I know we have so many students going to our public charter schools, and with all those, their faculty and staff as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Additional questions, Senator Neal.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you guys for your presentation. I really liked it. You guys made me think about my third grade teacher, Miss Gorkowski, and you made me think about ninth grade when I got introduced to Shakespeare and went to go see Hamlet as a school field trip. But my question, I just wanted you to explain, and if you could break down on section 1, sub well, it's 2 sub 1, which is in line 7 through 13, where basically it says that the school district has budgeted money already. And so I think you kind of mentioned the match, but is there an expectation that what they have budgeted, the 250, will then, I guess, match that? Or are we, answer that and then I'll ask the follow-up.
Thank you for the question, Senator Neal. Through you, Madam Chair, to Senator Neal, Nicole Cannizzaro, Senate District 6. And so, I'm sorry, I want to make sure I'm looking at the right section. Section 1, subsection 2A1.
A1, where it said the school district has budgeted for the fiscal years 23 and 24, and 24 and 25 as an increase.
Yes, and so what we're looking for in that particular section, Senator, is to ensure that there is actually from the district side, right? Because this is not just, here's some money, put it in teacher raises. It is, we want to see the districts coming to help to support this and to support teachers. And so we want to be able to see in that documentation that they have budgeted for raises, and this is intended to be a match, right? So it's not just, here's $250 million in Senate Bill 231 that can be allocated for raises, but that there is a plan to actually provide for some salaries, raises for teachers and staff. And that way we know that, excuse me, that way we know that that is actually something that the district is working on. And so we wanted to make sure that when providing match dollars, there was some accountability and documentation to show where exactly those raises are going. So it's not just, yeah, we're planning to give raises, so now can we get X amount of dollars out of that 250? It's, here's how those raises are going to be budgeted, here's the personnel that we would expect would receive those raises and how many of them we have, to ensure that accountability, to make sure that when we talk about whether or not we are supporting teachers, that there is some kind of documentation for that. So that's the purpose of that language, that they would have to show us that they actually had budgeted for that.
So, quick follow-up. So are we also going to encourage them, because, you know, for the large school district, CCSD, they still have a lot of leftover coronavirus funds. Are we encouraging them to help them spend that leftover money to also add to this pot, which would probably go a long way, since they're sitting on, you know, a couple $100 million that they have not expended up to this point?
Thank you for that question, Senator Neal. Through you, Madam Chair, to Senator Neal, Nicole Cannizzaro, Senate District 6. So Senate Bill 231 doesn't prescribe how it is that they might budget for that, but certainly I think you bring up a great point, right? This is why there are accountability pieces within Senate Bill 231 to ensure that we're not just saying, here's some money, hopefully you give raises to teachers, and we're not really going to monitor or ask questions or delve into any sort of information on how it is you're giving those raises. I certainly think that they could utilize any of those unspent funds, right, to help within their budgeting process, be that for salary raises that they would submit to the interim finance committee, or through, you know, if they're budgeting for that money to be used in a different way, so that gives them additional money to give teacher raises in their budgets. I don't think that this bill precludes that at all. We would love to incentivize that, and if there's something we can put in the bill that would help with that, I think that's a great idea. And certainly I want for this presentation on this bill and the language here to be a statement that, you know, it's not enough for you to come and say, well, we support our teachers and our staff. We want to be able to see that you're actually budgeting to give them some of those increases so we can recruit and retain, and we're willing to meet you as a state and match you with some additional dollars to help support that. So happy to talk about, there might be some additional language for that, because I think that's a great point.
Thank you very much. All right, additional questions? All right, thank you very much. And we will go to those in support here in Carson City. Please come forward when you're ready.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Marie Nisus, N-E-I-S-E-S-S, and I'm the president of CCEA. CCA applauds the introduction of Senate Bill 231 by Democratic leadership, legislation that we have been working closely with them on since before the session began. This bill earmarks $250 million for salaries for all licensed education professionals and support staff. Majority Leader Canizaro and Speaker Yeager are demanding that school districts ensure that this money will go to education staff and that the bill has strict requirements on accountability and reporting. In part, it requires school districts to spend dollars on salaries in order to access these matching funds. It states that this funding for salaries is to supplement and not to be used for school districts to supplant salary increases for employees. It requires districts to give detailed reports on how they are spending that money, as well as how many licensed education professionals and support professionals districts employ. It specifically requires school districts' superintendents to sign a statement that they have complied with these provisions. We believe that this type of legislation is long overdue. For too long, there have been no checks on how CCSD spends money, often at the expense of frontline educators and students. We urge your support for SB 231. Thank you.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Mary Brzezinski here representing Nevada Association of School Superintendents. And NAS certainly appreciates the spirit of this bill. Improving student achievement by providing a qualified teacher and support staff in the classrooms is a top priority of the superintendents. We know that there are reports that will need to be made, and our superintendents are certainly ready to explain what they've done with this money. The mechanics of the bill, we're looking forward to learning more about that and how this bill is carried out, and so that all of our school districts can benefit. So we thank the sponsors for bringing it forward, and we also appreciated their personal comments today. And I hope that Mrs. Kraft understands what Speaker Yeager's doing now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. Good morning. Patricia Haddad, Director of Government Relations for the Clark County School District. Genuinely grateful to Majority Leader Canizaro and Speaker Yeager for bringing forward SB 231, prioritizing investment in education professionals throughout the state. The inclusion of education support professionals is a welcomed addition to this legislation, and these funds will also provide us with a much-needed opportunity to address the teacher salary schedule. We appreciate the discussion on the one-time funding and the sustainability therein, and Majority Leader Canizaro's statement during this hearing that she's willing to ensure the mechanics work. CCSD is fully aligned with the bill sponsors and that we would like for these funds to be sustainable. And we do worry that the required use of one-time funding only to provide recurring salary increases may create some financial problems. We know that that is truly not the intention of the bill sponsors, and we do look forward to additional
So are
discussion.
you in support?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I heard some were concerned, so I was trying to figure it out.
Certainly. So in support of the legislation and looking forward, certainly based on the conversation today around working out the mechanics, we continue to be in support and supportive of the bill sponsors.
Okay, if you could just sit there for just 1 second. Senator Neal has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So can you help the committee understand what CCSD is willing to put or add to the sustainability portion of this bill? What are you guys considering or thinking about in regards to your funds that you're going to put towards this?
So with regards, Patricia Haddad, Director of Government Relations for Clark County School District. So with regards to these funds, it has to do with the requirement and the agreement and collective bargaining agreements, right? And tying specific salary increases over a longer period of time than these particular funds. And so the money, we have some proposed potential language that, we're continuing to have conversations with around not requiring that the funds are used specifically for permanent salary increases, and that there are one-time compensation incentives that could be provided.
So, Madam Chair, just really quick.
Sure, go ahead.
So, okay. It's super early in the morning, so I'm going to ask this one more time. What funds is our CCSD planning on putting towards outside of what is in this bill?
Patricia Haddad, Director of Government Relations for the Clark County School District. Obviously, of course, the large investment that this legislature is putting into public education with the increase into the pupils ending funding formula, so our state allocation specifically to leverage these dollars. I would have to go back to our CFO to see if there are additional uses. I know you referred to the ESSER dollars and looking to see, of course, those dollars expire in October of 2024, I believe, and need to be used by that time. And so really, again, going back to the question of sustainability over time, if these are being tied specifically to salary increases that are bound by bargaining agreements.
So I'll jump in here. I'm just, the only reason I'm confused, to be honest with you, is because in this building, when you're in support, you're in support. And if you have questions about the bill at any level, you need to be opposed. You might be able to jump in neutral, but if you're for the bill, you're for the bill. And it doesn't matter whose bill it is, honestly, Speaker, Majority Leader, or a brand new legislator. So I'm just confused about some of the testimony we've heard. So that's for the sponsors of the bill, I guess, to sort out. So thank you very much. All right, anyone else in support in Carson City? All right, with that, we will go to support in Las Vegas. We'll go to support on the phone lines. Thank you very much. BPS, when you're ready.
If you would like to testify in support of SB 231, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the Senate Committee on Finance. For the record, my name is Nancy Kuhles, K-U-H-L-E-S. I am a speech-language pathologist, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Nevada Speech-Language Hearing Association and the NISHA Coalition to address personnel shortages in special education and related services. We are in support of Senate Bill 231. SB 231 is a legislative initiative that will increase statewide investments in Nevada's educators, other licensed educational personnel, or OLIPs, and paraprofessionals for the benefit of Nevada's children and youth. There is an ongoing critical shortage of Nevada OLIPs. SB 231 will support the recruitment and retention of Nevada's OLIPs that include educational audiologists, school counselors, school nurses, school psychologists, speech-language pathologists, school social workers, school occupational therapists, and school physical therapists. On behalf of the Nevada Speech, Language, and Hearing Association and the NISHA Coalition to address personnel shortages in special education and related services, we respectfully request your support and passage of Senate Bill 231. Thank you for your time and consideration of this matter.
Thank you, and thank you for what you do. Additional callers, BPS, when you're ready.
The public line is open and working. There are no callers at this time.
Thank you very much. And we'll go to opposition here in Carson City. Please go ahead when you're ready.
If you would like to testify in opposition to SB 231, please.
BPS, if you'll wait just a minute, we're going to be here in Carson City. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chris Daly, Nevada State Education Association, the voice of Nevada educators for over 120 years. While NSCA appreciates the intent of Senate Bill 231, NSCA has submitted an amendment to facilitate a clean 20 for every Nevada educator. Yesterday, nearly 1,000 educators and supporters rallied here in front of the legislature to say it's a rainy day in Nevada and it's time for 20, meaning 20% raises for every Nevada educator, starting pay of $20 an hour, and average class sizes of 20 students. It seems like SB 231 was drafted to address the specific needs of a single bargaining unit. However, every Nevada educator deserves a raise. That's why NSCA has concerns with the overall construct of SB 231 as a matching program. Even with recommended increases in the state education fund, the Story County School District is projected to lose 5% of their funding next fiscal year. Several other school districts will only receive small increases. These districts will have limited ability to access matching funds, especially as fixed non-personnel costs have increased. An unintended consequence could be even larger class sizes, as the matching mechanism in 231 could incentivize districts to increase class sizes to access matching funds. Several school districts, including Clark and Washoe, have expressed concerns that SB 231's appropriations are one-time and they are hesitant to use them to cover ongoing expenses like educator pay. That's a big problem. So NSCA offers amendment language to deliver a clean 20 for all Nevada educators. Even with recommended appropriations to K-12 and this $250 million, most Nevada educators would still fall short of a 20% raise. NSCA's amendment would increase the total appropriation in SB 231 from $250 to $500 million, giving districts like Washoe and Clark the opportunity to negotiate significant increases in salary. With nearly $3 billion recommended for reserves next biennium, there are more than enough funds available. Our amendment would delete the matching mechanism, allowing all districts to access funds proportionately and increase pay equitably. Flexibility would be granted to districts to first increase starting pay for employees earning less than $20 an hour. Finally, monies would be appropriated to the state education fund to ensure their availability to continue to fund personnel into the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Any more opposition here in Carson City? Go ahead when you're ready.
Good morning, committee. For the record, Ben Contine. I'm the elementary school lead for the Honors Academy of Literature. We are a small, independent public charter school in downtown Reno, serving 232 students and families K through 8. It is with a heavy heart that I sit here in opposition to this bill. In fact, I would say I agree with almost everything that Senator Cannizzaro and Speaker Yeager said. I come from a school with a lot of Mrs. Crafts. We're an independent school, not under the management of CMO or EMO. We were founded by two Reno moms who met in the UNR Educational Leadership Program with a vision to create a small, intimate, family type of school with teachers and families having a lot of autonomy and voice, and their vision is thriving. We were just recently named Best of Reno, the best Reno public school. Yet we're at risk for survival. Our costs, healthcare, utilities, and rent is skyrocketing. We spend $920 for every student, or about 13% of our budget, on rent. You can imagine, because we care so much about our school, we care so much about each other, how thrilled we were to hear that there is a desperately needed increase in the per pupil funding, and that there would be possible money for increased teacher salaries, some of whom are struggling to make ends meet. You might also imagine how devastating it was when I had to tell them, as drawing the short straw of the person who has to come and testify, that they would not be included in this bill. That somehow the children that they teach and the classrooms that they're in are not worthy of this bill. They don't get it. They don't understand why, as public school teachers who serve students with passion and professionalism, that they're not included. I've tried to explain the politics, but it is still hurtful to them that they are not included in this bill. I want to honor the work that the teachers associations have done. I want to honor the work that all public school teachers have done. I would love to be sitting here testifying in unity with all of the teachers across the state in support of this bill. I'm somewhat crushed that I have to come and testify against this, but that's where we are. So I ask respectfully that you consider the inclusion of schools like ours, who we believe is a critical piece of the educational infrastructure of the state of Nevada. And I'm certainly would welcome any questions. And Eric, I guess I would turn it over to you, or I guess that's for the chair to do. I apologize.
Yeah.
Thank you.
As a teacher, I get to run the classroom.
Yes,
Thank you very much.
I apologize.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate your words. Thank you very much. Please go ahead.
Good morning. My name is Eric Perez. I'm the principal of High Desert Montessori Charter School in Reno. We're a Washoe County School District-sponsored, self-managed public Montessori school that serves the community as a choice for families for pre-K through 8th grade. Our students go to high school with extraordinary skills in critical thinking, collaboration, and problem solving. Many of our students come to us from underserved communities of color and qualify for free and reduced lunch. We do not receive equal funding in comparison to district schools in many areas. For example, we spend roughly 25% of our state per pupil funding on facilities costs. We strive to pay our highly trained and highly qualified staff on par with district pay scales. Roughly 90% of our budget is spent on payroll. I'm disappointed and surprised that our charter teachers and staff are being left out of this bill. Not being included tells our teachers, who are state licensed and receive high quality Montessori training far beyond state requirements, that they are worth less than district teachers. This will result in a loss of teachers, inconsistency for our amazing students, and will diminish our ability to complete our mission to provide a high quality Montessori education to our community. Recruiting highly qualified teachers will be even more difficult if we are excluded from these funds. Please consider including charter schools in this bill to make sure all teachers, students, and schools are funded equitably. It's difficult to oppose this bill because I agree with almost everything it intends to do, but for those reasons, I am opposed to this bill without charters included. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please go ahead.
Good morning, Madam Chair and committee members. My name is Jenny Hunt, and I'm the proud director of Mariposa Language and Learning Academy in Reno, which is a Title I, 50% English language learner, 90% Hispanic student population. We are a district-sponsored charter school that is self-managed without an EMO or a CMO. Mariposa staff and students have worked hard and made remarkable progress among challenging times that we all know of, from being one of the lowest performing schools in the state in 2017 at 1 star to being one of the highest performing Title I schools with 90% Hispanic students to 83 points or a 4-star school. It is with great surprise and sadness and concern that it appears that SB 231 excludes the staff at our charter school for salary support. Mariposa serves statistically underserved students, and this bill adds another layer of barriers to educating them without the money to support our staff. There's an inequity, and it compounds that inequity currently with our funding, as mentioned by my colleagues. Our students are getting less money compared to their peers down the street. This is illustrated as our school pays an excess of $15,000 a month for just our facility rent, and it increases annually based on CPI. Students will be consequenced when they possibly lose their highly skilled, dedicated teacher that has been with them at Mariposa for years, meeting their diverse needs, because they are going to be forced to choose money for the well-being of their family over their teaching location. This bill sends the message not only to our students, staff, and families, but to the country that we have less value for charters and for choice, and we discriminate against public charter school options. Many of you met 9 students from Mariposa last week, and you made connections with them, and you congratulated them on their testimony, and you thanked them for coming. I implore you to amend SB 231 to include and authentically value those students by ensuring equitable access to these funds for their teachers. As Senator Cannizzaro mentioned, public school teachers make a difference, and we need the tools to ensure our staff is compensated just as other public educators across the state are being compensated. These are our students and the future of Nevada. They are not Democrat versus Republican, union versus non-union, North versus South. They are public school students and public school teachers that must be funded equitably with public dollars.
Thank you very much. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. So I am Sarah Adler, today speaking for the Charter School Association of Nevada. But for a moment, for myself. For 6 years, I was a teacher over at Carson High School, and I was that teacher, Speaker Yeager, for Walker Gotchi, who was a very troubled kid and now owns Mattress King on Fairview Avenue. And so I'd love for you to go and meet Walker. But Grace Adler, whose 7th birthday is today, her teacher is Mrs. Hogan at Carson Montessori, a district-sponsored charter school. And Mrs. Hogan's making an amazing difference in Grace's life. So a little more context. As some of you have been here for many years know, the charter law was established making charter schools a part of the public schools of Nevada in a bipartisan effort in 1997. This guy, Ernie Adler, was one of the sponsors. Today, charters enroll 64,000 public students in Nevada. Their enrollment is projected to go to 69,000 students. Yes, a 6.5% increase based upon parents finding the best fit for their kids. Charters are projected next school year to be enrolling 14.6% of Nevada's public school students. The growth in charters has happened very importantly within the framework established in 2019 by Assemblyman Thompson's bill, the Strategic Growth Framework. And since that time, charter schools have continued to provide wonderful quality education across all demographics to all students. I mean, it's really exciting. Our Native American students are performing 22% better in ELA in charter schools and 18% better in mathematics in charter schools. This is an opportunity for some. All kids need opportunity, and charters are providing it. So charters, as my colleagues have said, receive no public funding for their facilities. On average, they're putting 15% of their PCFP dollars to the roofs over the kids' heads. So they start out with only 85% of what districts have to pay their precious teachers and staff. WCSD, by contrast, has not only property tax dollars, traditional ones, but they have WC1, which is creating magnificent temples to learning. So the facilities are very unequal already. Senator Neal asked about ESSER funds. WCSD gave only 40 cents of ESSER dollars to their district-sponsored charters for every dollar of ESSER for the rest of their children. But we're thrilled when the Joint Money Committees recommended the additional dollars above GovRec for the PCFP. That was a fantastic day for all educators. Then comes SB 231. This is also wonderful. You couldn't do better than to provide more dollars for educators. Yet SB 231 treats charter teachers and staff as less than. It provides $311 per pupil if you take total district enrollment. But it would only cost districts $45 per pupil to let charter schools into this opportunity to treat their staff with respect and the opportunity to keep those staff, so we keep these learning opportunities across all demographics in Nevada. I'm sorry Senator Neal isn't here at the moment. Please let her know I quoted Hamlet, "The readiness is all." CSAN has an amendment which would add charter schools to this bill. We appreciate your consideration. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And are you suggesting that we pay all charter school teachers, whether they're certificated or not?
Oops, turned my mic off. That would be an option for the committee. We would like to be treated equitably with the districts. So if they're certified, licensed, just equity with the other public schools. Thank you.
Well, public school teachers need to be certificated. There is no percentage, so you can't, I could not teach a first grade class or a mariachi band or a dance class or whatever it is without being certificated in a public school. I can in a charter. So that's my question.
So that would certainly be an appropriate constraint. And in fact, these additional dollars would incentivize teachers to, in fact, achieve certification. So if that were the criteria for charter schools, I think that they would understand the message you were sending.
Thank you. Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Hi, Katrin Ivanov, Ivanoff, aka Mrs. Fixit, Assembly District 42, Senate District 9. I'm here as a concerned mom, and the reason the chair was confused when the people were here in support of the bill is because it is not popular to come in opposition for a bill for raise for our teachers. So I want to be on the record. I am for raise for our teachers. Our teachers do need raise, and the intent of the bill is commendable. However, the way the bill is written, it doesn't achieve that. It excludes good teachers from the charter school that is already mentioned. And also, we need to figure out what happens. The school district has no accountabilities. Just throwing money at them all the time, it's not going to solve the problem. We need to have accounting investigation to see how they're spending our money, and a lot of the money don't even go to the teachers, which is what we as parents want, because the teachers are the ones spending time with our kids, and we want them happy, and we want them not to worry about how they're going to feed their own kids. So I definitely think teachers deserve raise. It's well overdue. However, I don't think this bill addresses that issue for many of the teachers, because charter schools are public schools. I don't see the reason they're excluded. And also, if you guys finally approve the governor's bill for the money following the students, we're gonna have better schools, and once we have better schools, also better teachers, because the students are gonna go where the good teachers are. And let's the choice of the parent be the ultimate one. Thank you so much, and thank you for the hard work you're doing. Have a lovely day.
Thank you so much. And I just would add there that I think that we need to remember that teachers, for the most part, that are in charter schools were public school teachers, which means they were qualified, competent, and hardworking teachers. And many times teachers from charter schools go back to public schools. So I think that we need to remember that all teachers work hard, no matter their venue that they are teaching in. So thank you very much. Any additional opposition here in this audience? Thank you very much. Anyone in Las Vegas? Seeing none, BPS, we'll go to the phone lines. Thank you.
If you would like to testify in opposition to SB 231, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue.
CYRUS I am in opposition. I will ditto the comments. Yield.
Next caller, please.
The public line is open and working. There are no callers at this time.
Thank you very much. Neutral here in Carson City. Neutral in Las Vegas. And neutral on the phone lines. BPS when you're ready.
If you would like to testify in neutral for SB 231, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. The public line is open and working. There are no callers at this time.
Thank you very much. Closing remarks, Senator or Assemblyman? No? Okay. Thank you very much. So with that, I'll close the hearing on Senate Bill 231, and I will open the hearing on Senate Bill 233.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Nicole Canizaro. I represent Senate District 6 in the northwest portion of the Las Vegas Valley, and I'm here today to present to you Senate Bill 233, which revises provisions governing taxes on certain heavy equipment. Madam Chair, joining me today is Mr. Chris Ferrari, and then we have down in Las Vegas at Grant Sawyer, Brian Gordon, and I am going to turn it over to Mr. Gordon. I wanted to just make some very brief remarks in the beginning to give you the context of what the bill does. I believe that we did submit an amendment as well as we've continued to work through this particular bill. Members of the committee should have that, and Mr. Gordon can speak a little bit more to that amendment, and then we would be happy to address any questions that you or the committee may have. So Senate Bill 233 seeks to revise our tax structure governing the rental of heavy equipment. And as in terms of a little bit of context for this piece of legislation, in Nevada, currently, we assess a full year of tangible personal property tax on any piece of heavy equipment that is in the state on July 1st of a given year, even if that piece of equipment is only in the state for one day. Nevada is one of only 6 states that continue to use that form of taxation on heavy equipment, and the other 44 states have all moved to various forms of taxation or fees that exist. And so this is really an opportunity for us to implement some business-friendly legislation that will help revise our tax structure, because again, we're one of those only 6 states that have that piece. We have been working diligently with this bill for any and all stakeholders. I don't believe that we've alleviated all opposition at this point, but have been working towards a point of making sure that what we're doing in terms of revising the tax structure would be revenue, would be never revenue neutral. and that would help bring our state more in line with the other 44 states who sort of tax this type of equipment a little bit differently. With that, Madam Chair, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Gordon to talk a little bit more about the amendment. There were several fiscal notes that we have on this bill, but I'm going to let him take over and then we can talk about that. Thank you.
Please go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you, Majority Leader. I appreciate that. And Madam Chair, my name is Brian Gordon. I'm a principal with a consulting firm called Applied Analysis here in Las Vegas. I've got a handful of slides that I had planned to share with you. I think they're being driven from the desk up there in northern Nevada and Carson City. So I have very little control over that. So I will try to work through this as quickly as we can, given your busy schedule. Slide 1 that I have here for you today really encapsulates what the Majority Leader just conveyed to you. I will not repeat her comments. I think maybe the main point here to raise is that heavy equipment rental companies don't necessarily fit neatly into some of the taxation structures that exist today in the state of Nevada. This equipment is very mobile. It is oftentimes moved in and out of different counties within the state of Nevada. It is also moved in and out of different states. And so the mobility of this particular equipment is a bit unique, and one of the reasons that this legislation has been proposed. The next slide will just demonstrate really the highlights that the Majority Leader just covered. There are only 6 states that do not tax heavy rental equipment in some other form or fashion. A significant number of the states do not have personal property taxes. And then on the next slide, we've got about 18 states that have already passed legislation to alter the taxation structure to move or migrate to something that looks more like an excise tax on the rental revenue as opposed to a personal property tax as it currently exists in the state of Nevada. Those other states you see on the screen, with Oklahoma continuing to work through a proposal this year as well. There also have been a number of questions raised or concerns put forward from a number of folks as it relates to the bill itself and how it would ultimately perform. I've been asked just to walk through a couple of those and maybe some considerations for this committee to think about in terms of what some of those concerns are and maybe some alternatives that have been proposed by the industry in an effort to attempt to alleviate some of those concerns. The first one being really the appropriateness of the proposed tax rate, and some raising concerns about the uncertainty that may exist if that proposed tax rate on the rental revenue would effectively offset any exemption on the personal property tax side. There's really 2 elements to trying to address that the industry has come up with. One is to perform really what they asked us to do. Our firm was perform a 3-year look back. I'll walk you through that, but also to perform a 2-year prospective true up. And so on the next slide, these are the data and the analytics that we were able to pull together. The American Rental Association, the trade association that governs or oversees heavy equipment rental companies, allowed us to be really the intermediary between all of its members and those that rent this type of equipment out to the public in an effort to ensure confidentiality among its members so that they were not sharing company-specific information with one another. They asked Applied Analysis to essentially be that a warehouse of information that ensured the information remained confidential and proprietary. So we collected that data from members of the American Rental Association. They fed that to us. We looked at specifically 2 data points. Really, one was for them to report to us the amount of personal property taxes that they paid, and we did this over a 3-year look-back period. We also asked them to provide the rental revenue that they generated off of that same equipment. And so I'm sharing the aggregate figures here for you today. These are rounded, but over the course of that look-back period, we saw about $12 million worth of personal property taxes that were paid by those that submitted their information to us. At the same time, they were generating somewhere on the order of about $600 million in terms of rental revenue. we did the simple math and divided the two to come up with what we have settled on that you've seen in SB 233, which is an effective tax rate of 2.0%. And so over that last 3 years, that's really where the industry settled in on that tax rate. There have been similar rates in other states implemented, but here in the state of Nevada, this reflects their activity over the past 3 years. The next slide is intended to give you a sense of what the industry has offered as a potential true-up. Given the concerns expressed about the appropriateness of that 2% tax rate, there's a true-up alternative that is included in the proposed amendment 3657 to Senate Bill 233. I believe that was just released earlier this morning. But it does provide a couple of provisions in there. And what it outlines in just simple terms, just to cut to the chase, is that in fiscal 25 and in fiscal 26, the industry will submit data on its equipment to the Nevada Department of Taxation, both its revenue that it generates, rental revenue. It will also provide at the beginning of the year a listing of all of its personal its heavy equipment that would be subject to the personal property tax regime as it currently exists. The Department of Taxation would take that data. They would be able to compare the rental revenue relative to what the personal property tax liability would have been, just like I showed you in that previous slide, on a statewide basis, and can tell you whether the effective tax rate is higher or lower than 2%. They would do that for 2 consecutive years. They would also post that information on its website at the Nevada Department of Taxation for the public to view the results of their analysis. And then by October, no later than October 1 of 2026, the proposed amendment suggests that the Department of Taxation would then report to the Nevada Legislature the results of that 2-year true-up and provide any recommendations if they thought there should be some sort of adjustment to the overall rate based on the performance of the last 2 years. And so that is one element of the amendment that is an attempt to try and provide some confidence in terms of where the effective tax rate ultimately shakes out. It's also important to note that the folks from the American Rental Association have communicated to me in those 18 states where if they've employed a similar methodology, they have yet to have one state push back or essentially dispute the rates that were generated or create any claims in terms of less revenues being generated than anticipated. So I believe we may have folks up in Carson City that can speak to that further, but nonetheless, you get the idea. This just hasn't been an issue in those 18 states since they've been implemented. The next slide or concern that was really addressed that has come up is that some counties may potentially be negatively impacted as a result of this proposal. I think you've probably understood from the majority leader's comments at the outset and your review of the legislation. The idea here, the intent is really for the economic, or I should say the tax revenue, to essentially follow the economic activity or follow where that equipment is located to ensure there's an equitable distribution of that revenue where the rentals are taking place and ensure transparency from that standpoint. On the next slide, I believe this is from the latest amendment, section 17.2, the implications for the counties. Just thinking about it from this standpoint, the idea is that I guess the tax revenue that is being submitted would be allocable toward the location based on the location information, provided by the renter. And so obviously there are branch offices for rental companies that rent out equipment. Some equipment is picked up. Sometimes that equipment is delivered to a job site. The industry has indicated that they are willing to accept the information from the renters in terms of where that equipment will be located and include that when reporting back to the Nevada Department of Taxation in terms of where the equipment is and where that rental revenue will be allocated. And so you get the sense of the idea here is that the revenue will follow where the rental is taking place. The last one here I have on my list is the reliance on the NAICS codes. There's been some concern about what that does from an uncertainty standpoint and how that should be classified. This, in fact, I believe really narrows in on who is eligible for this particular legislation. These would be heavier rental equipment companies falling within these two NAICS codes, and they need to be primarily engaged in the business of renting heavy equipment to third parties within the state. This would exclude owner-operators. This would exclude sellers of heavy equipment and only be those rental companies that are renting to the public. The final are a couple of other proposed amendments really designed to update the legislative intent. There's a cap of 40 years included in this latest amendment. It also does state if this excise of the property tax exemption is repealed, the excise tax will be repealed. You see the other edits here, amendments included in the proposed legislation for administrative purposes, including a more timely distribution of the revenue on a quarterly basis. Those were my prepared comments. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Mr. Ferrari, did you go ahead? And would you please turn off your mic down in Las Vegas so we don't get feedback? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the committee, I just wanted to provide a quick kind of wrap up of where we are today in terms of this bill. I want to thank the Majority Leader for her efforts on this. This is a policy endeavor that's been pursued now for the third session. We all know that change is a bit uncomfortable. We have worked with county assessors extensively. The result of the Majority Leader's amendment that was uploaded this morning is the result of many meetings in discussing every possible intricate issue. The number one, ensuring revenue neutrality. It is not the objective of the new policy to deny any recipient of current revenue those revenues. It's simply a streamlining process, and I think the good faith is demonstrated through a true-up provision, which shows if anybody is left shortchanged, the industry is going to step up and say, let's get this fixed, let's ensure you are made whole. So we appreciate the committee's indulgence today and all of the efforts by the Majority Leader. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Senator Gocochea.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I've got a couple of questions. I'll try and be brief so we don't run too long. I've tried to figure out the limitation. Now you say only an equipment leasing company, but typically we have some of the larger, I don't care if you're talking PAPE, they might have a lease to own or those programs. They typically sell equipment as well as rent or have rental programs. How do you capture them, or are they exempt?
This is Brian Gordon. Thank you for the question. Just briefly, all of the rental-related activities would be subject to this alternative excise tax. Sellers of equipment would not be subject to that. Obviously, rental companies do ultimately sell their equipment, but the rental revenues associated with that, if they fall within those two NAICS codes and primarily offer their equipment to the rental at public, would be included in this measure.
Go ahead, please.
Thank you. Just a quick follow-up, Madam Chair. I guess you hit on it with your introduction. Mobility is the problem. This stuff, I can go to Elko or Sparks, rent a piece of equipment. I load it on my low bed. I guess at that point, I'm going to tell you I'm going to use it in Lander County. That equipment might even be going back and forth over county lines at that point. But again, I guess I'm really concerned. I think it'll work good. I think the 2% probably is fair. Most of the smaller end equipment that is rented is, I know the assessors are complaining, but typically it's not captured. If it's not $1 million 992, they're not capturing it. If it's a scissor lift or a backhoe, they never catch it July 1st. So I think there's going to be some real parity established there on the 2%. But again, it's the mobility piece. I'm going to go in, I'm going to rent this piece of equipment. I'm going to tell you I'm taking it to Lander County. It might be in a dozen counties. How do we, you're just going to say, okay, wherever I tell you I'm going to work it.
Thank you, Senator Brian Gordon. For the record, that is correct. We will take the information from the renter, and that's where that rental revenue and ultimately the tax revenue would be allocable to. And again, that doesn't change anything that's being done today within the current personal property tax system.
Yes, I appreciate that, and one thing this might stop you from doing is shopping tax rates. Some counties have a lower tax rate than others. If realistically, if you were going to rent it under the old, and you could declare it rather than have the assessor catch it, I could say, hey, I'm going to go to Eureka or Douglas, which has a lower tax rate, and therefore the assessment would be less. So that would take that away as well. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Where else can we talk about scissor lifts and backhoes? All right. Any other questions or comments? Senator Neal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is coming from the amendment on Section 1. So does the assessor currently impose a tax by NAICS code?
Senator Neal, Brian Gordon for the record. My understanding is that the current approved Nevada Department of Taxation personal property tax manual does recommend collecting information at the NAICS code level. I don't know that it necessarily is submitted with every return. I think the assessors are here to comment on that, but that is the recommendation from the Nevada Department of Taxation today.
Okay, because I don't think at the county level it's done by NAICS, but I'll let the assessors deal with that. So are affiliates in or out?
Thank you, Senator. Brian Gordon for the record. Affiliates or commonly controlled entities would be excluded to avoid any tiering of the tax. The goal is not for businesses to set up affiliates to somehow opt into this system. Those would be excluded is the intent in the legislation.
Madam Chair, I have a couple more questions, but
please go ahead.
So my next question is on Section 39.3, Sub 3, which are lines 12 through 24. And this is the provision where basically you're saying if the total amount of the tax imposed pursuant to Section 12 of this act on all taxpayers for fiscal year 24-25 is greater than the property tax on heavy equipment and rental property that would have been owed, then there's a refund provision. Help me understand this, because I don't understand how we're aggregating all the taxpayers, but you're exempted. Who's in this calculation of all?
Thank you, Senator Brian Gordon. For the record, this would be heavy equipment rental companies that provide their list of heavy equipment at the beginning of the year, and those that submit their rental revenue and related taxes associated with those rentals. So those would be the companies that are falling under the purview of SB 233.
So, okay, so let me get this right. So you're exempted from, in this bill, you're going to give a list, and then after a calculation, if all of the taxpayers are then looked at and the amount is greater than the property tax on the heavy equipment that would have been paid, then the Department of Taxation must pay back an amount equal to or the difference between the amount that would have been remitted to the state. So you're not going to pay it, but then if, I don't know what circumstance occurs where there is going to be this aggregate calculation where then the state is going to write you a check. And that's a euphemism of you.
Thank you, Senator Neal. Brian Gordon for the record. The whole idea is that the rental companies will be reporting what their revenues were and apply that 2% tax. You will also see exactly what they would have been paying if they were paying a personal property tax under the current tax regime. And just the State Department of Taxation would be comparing those two numbers. If more revenue came in as a result of the rentals, there would be a refund back to the equipment rental companies. If the rental revenue came in short relative to what the personal property tax would have been, they will get a bill and they have to pay the difference. The industry is willing to pick up the tab to pay the difference if it were to come in short for any reason.
And then, yeah, I saw that provision in sub 4 on the less than, and I believe this is a new account, heavy equipment rental tax account, where if less comes in, then there is a deposit into a new account to then pay out to the counties.
Thank you, Senator Neal. Brian Gordon for the record. The separate account is primarily just an accounting function for the state, so those revenues come into a dedicated fund or bank account, essentially, if you want to think about it that way. But any overpayments would be refunded to heavy equipment rental companies, and any underpayments would be made by those same companies into that same account, so they ultimately get distributed back to the county.
And Madam Chair, one final. So what happens after 2026? Because it seems like a lot of these provisions apply to, these calculation pieces apply to fiscal years 24, 25, 25, and 26, even though it expires, but there are no additional dates where after this biennium, there will be calculations or a baseline. That's confusing to me.
Thank you, Senator Brian Gordon, for the record. The whole idea here is that this provides the state and the counties an opportunity to see how this tax performs for a 2-year window. The Nevada Department of Taxation comes back with a recommendation based on that actual activity that they've been able to monitor, and then provide any recommendations if there should be an adjustment or recommended adjustment to that tax rate of 2.0%. And then beyond that, the idea is that that rate is locked in, and that is what is implemented into perpetuity.
Will this section 39.3 sub 3, that will be locked into perpetuity, where we're still looking at aggregate and then issuing a refund based on all taxpayers? Or these are your test scenarios for tax payments?
Senator Neal, Brian Gordon for the record, you said it better than I did. I'm sorry. This is a test period for 2 years. Once that test period is done, there will be no longer any of these calculations comparing both personal property taxes and rental revenue excise taxes. So this would go away after that 2-year window.
So we're going to do a test tax policy where we pay and give refunds if you pay more. Has any of the other states ever done a mechanism like this?
Senator Neal, Brian Gordon for the record. My understanding is that there have been some states that have done a similar true-up. I think you have some folks directly from the industry that may be sitting in Carson City that have additional background, but this type of approach has been implemented in other states.
Okay, Senator Wynn, please.
This is kind of piggybacking off of this, and it's very echo.
Is your microphone on in Las Vegas?
No,
Okay,
this is here.
thank you.
I think it's me. Oh, look at that. That one seems to work. This is kind of directed off of Senator Neal's, like piggybacking off this. It's my understanding that there were issues mostly with the county assessors and the counties, because they were not worried about the potential refund issue, but they were concerned about that there would be an actual loss of that rental tax revenue. And so it's my understanding that, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that kind of these hold harmless provisions for the first 2 years of implementation were to address that potential like underpayment that was anticipated. I realize that there's refund provisions in there, but it's my understanding, at least in talking with the counties and some of the other people that had concerns with this implementation of this new process, that it was mostly that there were concerns that they were going to lose that rental tax revenue. And in fact, and this might be a question for, this is more of a statement, I guess. Is that correct? Is my understanding correct?
Yes, Senator, for the record, Ed Noonan with United Rentals. That is exactly what we're doing. When this first came to the legislature a couple years ago, some of the feedback we got from the counties was, we don't know if we're going to be made whole. And we shared what was done in the other states. We provided examples of that. We also shared that out of all the other states that had done this, nobody had come back after the fact saying this doesn't work, we need to repeal that legislation. So what we've proposed is a 2-year true-up to support what we're doing and say we're willing to put a true-up in there. We want to make sure that it's easy and administratively easy for folks to do. And if for that 2-year period, we can demonstrate that this 2% works. If it doesn't, if it's off 5% or whatever that is total, they can come back and make that adjustment up or down. I think that makes sense. We're open to, that refund. It's got to go somewhere. And so I know one state had done it where it goes back to the general fund. This goes back to the rental companies. We're open to that. This is just how it was drafted. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, and I appreciate your flexibility in wanting to, do that. I'm sure members of this committee would appreciate it going back to the general fund as opposed to back to your rental companies. But I guess my question is, and the reason I ask this, and this might be a question for NACO or the counties that had previously, they might still be in opposition to the bill, even with the amendment, but I'm looking at their fiscal notes right now, and it appears that that is based on the total loss of rental tax revenue. And I guess this might be, I'm looking at you all over there because you're all sitting together. This might be a question for you. Would this true up kind of hold harmless provision during that first 2 years? Would those amendments in that section, I guess it's like 39.3, 39.5, and 39.7, would that eliminate your fiscal note? Because that would make hold you, I guess you would get all that money ultimately if it was a loss of revenue like you anticipate. And that's all. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Additional questions or comments on this? All right, with that, thank you very much, and we will go to those in support of Senate Bill 233 here in Carson City. Those come forward. Thank you. Please go ahead when you're ready.
Mac Bybee, representing the Associated Builders and Contractors of Nevada, here to just express our support for SB 233. I believe Senator Neal brought up the affiliates piece of this legislation, just to provide a little background on that. It really was placed in there to preserve the status quo where a construction company might set up a separate company to manage its fleet. And when the initial draft came in, it would have double taxed on that existing relationship. So it's really just a preservation of a system that currently exists.
Would you repeat who you're representing? I'm sorry.
Associated Builders and Contractors of Nevada.
Thank you very much. Okay, go ahead, please.
Good morning, Madam Chair. For the record, Trey Abney, representing the 2,000 member businesses of NFIB, National Federation of Independent Business in Nevada. We are strongly in support of this measure. We're one of the few remaining states who have not modernized this process, and we've heard about this issue for years, and we hope that this fix can help many small businesses that are affected by this. Existing law, we believe, puts our state at a competitive disadvantage and is a disincentive to keep and maintain necessary equipment in this state. Both the American Legislative Exchange Council and the National Conference of State Legislators have suggested fixes like this being proposed in this bill, and so we support it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Any additional support here in Carson City?
Good morning, Chair Don Darrell-Loop and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Nick Schneider, representing the Vegas Chamber, and we are in support of SB 233, as we believe it's a good update to tax policy. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Terry Graves, representing the Nevada Trucking Association. We supported this bill in the Policy Committee, Committee of Origin, and continue to do so today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any additional support here in Carson City? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to Las Vegas. Any support in Las Vegas? Phone lines, BPS, when you're ready.
If you would like to testify in support of SB 233, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. The public line is open and working. There are no callers at this time.
Thank you very much. We'll go to opposition here in Carson City. Please come forward. And go ahead when you're ready.
Sorry, we were in the cheap sheets back there, so it took me a while to get down here. For the record, Vincent Guthreau, last name is spelled G-U-T-H-R-E-A-U. First name is Vincent, V-I-N-S-O-N. I serve as the Executive Director of the Nevada Association of Counties, or NACO, whose members are all 17 of Nevada's counties. Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity. We are testifying in opposition of SB 233. Similar bills, as mentioned, have been introduced in other sessions. I do want to make a couple of comments. One, we are just seeing this amendment today, the same time that it was out. We have seen it. I do want to, so we haven't had a full opportunity, my members have not had a full opportunity to digest it. To answer the question also preemptively on the fiscal notes piece, we have sent this out to our members to look at it. Right now, we do have a couple responses back that their fiscal notes do not change as a result of this. And we, so I did want to answer that for you, Senator Wynn. Also, I do want to make a comment about the other states, that this has been tried in other states. We have asked multiple times for that information, and that we are happy to take a look at it. To this day, still don't have that information, but happy to look at it when we do get it, so we can see how this would work. I will note that there's still a reduction in tax revenues because the commission to the state still stays in there, so that is a reduction to local tax revenues. A couple other things, like I said, we are looking at updating our fiscal notes, and you'll hear from individual counties on what this pays for. But also, I do want to mention that we submitted a memo that we did share with the proponents of this bill. It is for the committee. I would say that anytime we review any new amendment, such as the one we have here, and we are happy to respond to the proponents of the measure on this amendment, we do look at equity of taxation. We also look at administration of the new method of tax, and we look at revenue neutrality. So we'll be happy to respond to the proponents on this. So, like I said, we haven't had a chance to fully digest the amendment, but we plan on doing so. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Cadence Matijevich, C-A-D-E-N-C-E-M-A-T-I-J-E-V-I-C-H, representing Washoe County. We would echo the comments from NACO and the information that's been submitted to you in our memorandum. Just a couple things that I would like to point out based on what you've heard this morning. Again, we are still reviewing the amendment. We understand that this has perhaps worked in other states, but our assessors, Washoe County is bound by the Nevada Constitution. And Article 10 of the Nevada Constitution calls for fair and equitable taxation. And the equity piece of this is important for us. You've been presented that there's a problem that needs to be solved for the heavy equipment industry. And frankly, we don't see a distinction between heavy equipment rentals and any other type of equipment rentals. Medical equipment rentals, trade show equipment rentals, motion picture and television equipment rentals, special event equipment rentals, office equipment rentals. They function much the same. And so we believe that this creates a separate treatment of one subsection of the rental industry. When Nevada became a full member of the streamlined sales tax in April of 2008, the Department of Taxation adopted LCB file 105-09 and put into Nevada Administrative Code 372-934 through 372-946, which speaks to regulations relating to rentals and leases. And Washoe County would present to you that there is a much more elegant solution to the problem that's been presented to you in Nevada Administrative Code 372.940, subsection 3B, which allows these companies to charge for the reimbursement of property taxes. Thank you.
Just checking the clock, Madam Chair. Joanna, good morning, Madam Chair, members
We're checking the clock with you, so
yeah,
go ahead, please.
I'm just checking the clock to see if it was still morning. Madam Chair, members of the committee, Joanna Jacob on behalf of Clark County. I'll echo and align myself with the comments of my fellow counties. From Clark County perspective, and I do want to let you know, Madam Chair, and Senator Neal, that we do have members of the Assessors Association present in Grant Sawyer. So they'll be ready to address the questions that came up from the assessor perspective when we go to Grant Sawyer. I want to talk about our approach to this bill. I appreciate the efforts of the majority leader. We will be responding and updating our fiscal note as well. From Clark County's perspective, we have 112 taxing districts. I want to talk about how this tax is collected today. It's collected at the county level and then automatically dispersed across those taxing districts. What this bill will require, and even with the amendment, is now that the tax will be collected at the state level. A portion of that will be offset to the state on page 4 of the bill for their cost of administrating a new tax, and then we are going to have to receive a lump sum back, and we do not have a mechanism to do that in our system. We will then be responsible for distributing. It looks like, from my preliminary review of this amendment, that we'll have to be responsible for tracking and administering refunds in collaboration with the Department of Taxation, but at the same time, maintaining our existing system, which is based on valuation of other properties, including those affiliates. So we'll be maintaining 2 new systems. So we will be updating our fiscal note because this is a cost of administration for which there is no offset, like there is one for the state. With property tax funds in Clark County, the largest share goes to the state education fund, and then to payment on Clark County school bonds. When we did school bonds for construction, it funds indigent care, family court services, Metro and Fire, and county and city general fund based on the location of the taxing district. I just want to talk about this really, and from a Clark County perspective, I will be testifying on a bill this afternoon in an Assembly Revenue Committee that is going to look at our property tax revenues and diverting it for another purpose. We are looking at cumulative fiscal impacts at this point and demands on our general fund. That's why we are still concerned about a potential change to our general funds and the way that we do this taxation, because we are, like my colleague from Washoe County stated, in Nevada, we have a very unique tax system, and revenues like the property tax fund are critical safety net. That is our concern. So we will be responding, and I want to just make sure that we, as we continue and as the session winds down, that we will be trying to be mindful of these demands on our general fund, on bills that maybe perhaps are yet to come, that will also make demands on the long-term liability for the county, and that is our concern. We will work with the majority leader and update our fiscal note, and I do have Assessor Johnson available for questions in Southern Nevada. She can speak to, I guess, the mechanics, if there's questions on the mechanics of our system and the challenges to administration of what is proposed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Senator Wynn has a question.
And you may not have this information right now, but I'm wondering if you know how much this currently generates for Clark County?
Joanna Jacob, for the record, through you, Chair Dondera Loop, to Senator Wynn. I don't have it off the top of my head. Perhaps Assessor Johnson has the total collection, but I can also get that to you. We can probably get it for you really quickly after that. And the total collections countywide. Thank you. And actually, our fiscal note that we did is, Assessor Johnson will correct me if I misspeak, because I did look at our new bill. We filed our fiscal note at the beginning of the session on as introduced. We looked again, and our collections to date through the latest billing cycle is 2.8 million instead of the 2.5 that's in our fiscal note. And she can probably, I'll defer any further clarification to her when she comes to testify from Grant Sawyer.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any additional questions right this second? Okay, thank you very much. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman and members of the committee. For the record, Mary Walker, representing Douglas, Lyon, and Story counties. I just want to echo the other counties and their concerns. We are, number one, concerned about the tax equity, particularly with other equipment rental companies. Secondly, when we talk about loss of money to the counties, I want to give you an example. A big chunk of this money also goes to the schools. In Lyon County alone, 37% of the property tax goes to the schools. I'm also concerned about the auditability of it. But I do have a question, and that is when they talk about this true-up, and on page 10, paragraph 3, and I really appreciate Senator Neal's comments and questions. But when they talk about that the total amount of the tax imposed on all taxpayers for 24-25 is greater than what we would have gotten, what I'm concerned is, I guess, just a question. What happens with the growth? I want to make sure that if we had, say, 50 of these businesses in 1 year, and then it increases by 10% to 55, well, that 10% growth, is that going to be part of what's going to be keeping us whole? Or is it, you know, when you look at actual dollars to actual dollars, I'm concerned about that, because we should have gotten that growth. So I would have that as a question. But I also want to thank the Majority Leader for bringing this forward, and the sponsors. Really appreciate all their hard work. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much. All right, any other opposition here in Carson City? In Las Vegas, please go ahead when you're ready.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Brianna Johnson, Clark County Assessor for the record. And I am here speaking on behalf of the Nevada Assessors Association, which is comprised of all 17 assessors in the state of Nevada. Unfortunately, the president couldn't be here today. And I ditto all of the comments made by those in opposition of Senate Bill 233. As an assessor, our main concern is the equity. Our concern is, how do we take the same piece of equipment that is owned by two different businesses, whether they're renting or they own it, and apply a different taxing mechanism, in which a mechanism we do not have. We do not have the ability to take funds or money and distribute those back to the counties. Everything that we do is based on valuation, and that valuation based on the equipment that is reported to us is placed into a system based on the year they acquired it, applies depreciation, and then comes up with an assessed value to generate taxes. We don't take money into our system, so we don't have a way to do that. In addition, there was some conversation about the lien date. The lien date of July 1 is for real and personal property on both sides. That lien date is the law, and that is what we are governed by. So it doesn't matter if a regular business reports to us everything that they have as of the lien date, and that copier breaks down 6 months later and they replace it, they don't pay taxes on the new copier. And this goes back to their comment that they may have equipment there on July 1, and then in December it moves to a different county. That's no different than any other business. We are about the equity of this bill, meaning how do we treat this industry different than all other taxpayers, not just in Clark County, but in the state of Nevada. And again, just dittoing that we do not have a mechanism to perform this type of legislation, to take money into our system and then redistribute it to the counties. It is indeed complicated for us. So for this reason, we are opposed to this potential legislation based on the inequity it creates, and it would be problematic to administer. The Nevada assessors believe the current method of assessing heavy equipment, rental or otherwise, is fair and equitable under the existing statutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Go ahead, please, when you're ready.
Yes, thank you. This is Mary Ann Widener, also the Deputy Director of the Clark County Assessor's Office and a committee on the Legislative Committee for the Nevada Assessors Association. I just want to make a few more comments. There was a comment made that where property is sourced, that the county is currently sourcing all property to where it is being rented, and that would be an incorrect statement. We are sourcing it to the location of the rental company, just like any other business in the state. So where the business is located is the district in which it is taxed in. And as was pointed out, there are 112 different taxing districts just within Clark County alone. So this system would actually require them to now take a piece of equipment that's moving from district to district just within Clark County and decide which district it's going to be taxed in with this new system based on the location of that equipment, whether it's there 2 weeks, 1 week, a month, a year, however that would work. And so it further complicates something that is working. There's some comments in the early part of this bill that reference the fact that this is an administrative, there's difficulties in administrating this. And we can tell you that there has been no difficulties in administrating this current system. It's working, it's been working for many years. It works for all of our properties. And so there's nothing with regards to the state and with assessment that is causing this to be administratively difficult. It appears to us that this bill actually creates a greater difficulty in administrating this new system, which is really not necessary because in the end, we're really talking about neutral taxation, if that's really what the goal is, to get to a neutral taxation. One other thing I want to mention is that the heavy equipment and company, I know it's been mentioned about the various types of equipment, but even the same type of equipment. So this equipment, the heavy equipment company rents both heavy equipment and lighter equipment. They have all different types of equipment. And so some of the smaller businesses in town that are also rental companies that rent the lighter equipment now are going to be taxed under one system, our current personal property taxing system. But because that same piece of equipment is being rented now under the umbrella of a heavy rental equipment company, they also get a different taxing system. They get taxed on this new way that this bill is proposing. And so once again, creates a whole different inequity just within the industry of renting and construction type of equipment in general. I believe that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Any additional opposition in Las Vegas? We'll go to the phone lines, BPS.
If you would like to testify in opposition to SB 233, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. The public line is open and working. There are no callers at this time.
Thank you very much. We'll go to neutral here in Carson City.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Jeff Mitchell with the Nevada Department of Taxation. I'm the Deputy Director of Excise and Local Government Services. Just wanted to speak to this bill. We are neither for or against, but mainly concerned with the administration of it, and we had submitted a fiscal note based upon the original language. Having received the amendment, we are reviewing. As that does change the administration of this tax at the department's level in regards to reporting, as well as distributions, and we will be responsive and revise accordingly.
Thank you very much. All right, any additional neutral here in Carson City? We'll go to Las Vegas. Seeing no neutral, we'll go to the phone lines. BPS, when you're ready.
If you would like to testify in neutral for SB 233, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. The public line is open and working. There are no callers at this time.
Thank you very much. Closing comments, Majority Leader. Okay, with that, I will close Senate Bill 233. And at this point, we are going to recess. I apologize if you were here for Senate Bill 54, 216, or 443, and stay tuned because that might be the ever-changing agenda. But we will be recessing. We will be going to the floor. We have afternoon committees with work sessions. So stay tuned to when we decide to or can find a time to come back in. We are hoping for earlier rather than later, but it's that time of session. So I appreciate your patience as we move through the agenda and the schedule for the day. But at this point, we'll stand in recess.